Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Night's Light Astrology. Make sure this is close enough. My name is Rafi, and you can check me out on Twitter too. Actually, just got a handle change to @NightsLight, so going consistent across everything. But today we're going to be covering part 2 of my Trinity of Convergence series, and it's going to get into a word we're going to use a lot in this series, in this video, in this stream rather. And that's going to be eschatology, which is the study of the end times, our study of biblical prophecy. And so in the last one, we went over Uranus and Gemini and how it relates to the mechanisms with whether you want to call it Protestantism, evangelicalism, a little bit of Catholicism in there too. But then when we get into Pluto and Aquarius, there's going to be some interesting things with Eastern Orthodoxy that kind of fit into there, interestingly enough. But I mean, the stuff we're going to go over in this stream will really dig into how that works out. And it is kind of a negligible thing, but worth mentioning. But yes, in this, we're going over Neptune in Aries and its relationship to Islam and Islam eschatology, their end times prophecy. So we'll go over the end times prophecy stuff. We'll go over some key dates. We're going to pull up some charts. I've got about like 8 or so charts here. For us to kind of look through as we get through the presentation. And, just like with the last one, I haven't even looked at this presentation, at this PowerPoint. So we're going to hope it's all set up well. But, I mean, it seems like it was pretty good when I just, looked over. I looked over essentially one version of it, and it wasn't quite hitting the way I wanted it to. And I was running really short on time, but I had AI just make some corrections to it, and we're just going to see if it worked out. I mean, it seems like it looked pretty good. I just looked at the first maybe 5 pages of it. So yeah, we're going to get into all that. And interesting ram symbolism too. I think a lot of people mostly think of, Judaism and early, I guess you'd say like Palestine or like Syria it was called back then, or that whole Fertile Crescent area. People really think of that when you're talking about a ram, but the ram stuff, but it's actually huge, the ram symbolism in Islam and up to like current day stuff. Of course, you still have that in Judaism being used, the ram. I guess you could say it's across a lot of these things, but it's a theme in all the Abrahamic religions. But you'll see where it really, really connects with modern day Islam, and then also just the Islam roots and origins and everything with that too. I ended up finding some really interesting stuff as I did research for this over the last week. So I'm excited to present a lot of the connections for you guys today. And let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's see here. All right, so we got I guess the only thing it didn't take off is the blueprint thing right there on the front page. But the ram returns. So Neptune and Aries, 2 eschatologies, Islamic and American. So, and really what I'm going to get into, this is what was in my thumbnail description, is how in America particularly, we've really made the money. Hey there, Esperanza. Oh, hey there. What's going on, Torian? Good to see you. And what we're getting into, though, is how money has actually become the new god, and it kind of becomes its own eschatology. There's a way we can relate it a little bit to the Neptune Aries in terms of in America, how it's working, and also how Islam may be the only bastion or a belief system that can really, in this time frame we're in, this Trinity of Convergence, that can give pushback on God has money, because then, so that's kind of a whole thing we'll get into. I'll touch on it here and there, and it goes very deep, but we'll make sure we're kind of running through this. But yeah, the Civil War mirror and the water that runs through the money. So we're going to get into water symbolism with money itself, and then also just what the Civil War was really about, which was, I mean, slavery was, I guess you could say, a part of it. But an interesting quote that we have from Abraham Lincoln, actually, that was in the midst of the war, was, he said, if I could end the war and not free a single slave, I would do it tonight. So that should really show you that it wasn't so much about slavery and everything. And we can even, I'll probably touch on the sides and everything, but it was essentially a war around money and around a new economic system that was coming in. And so I've mentioned the new economic system coming in with Uranus and Gemini, but I think that Uranus and Gemini is really setting up the systems for like the new money to come in. And then the water has to deal with the money itself. So the framework would be Uranus, Gemini, the technological framework for it to come through. And then you would have the money itself and the new quality it takes. As this world axis is reset that we had back in February. We can all feel this new world coming in. We all see these systems crumbling down. We've got that Saturn in Aries going on. And that was conjoined with Neptune. And this, they both came in and were in the conjunction, not exact, on February like 13th to 14th. Depends on where you are in the world. That exact conjunction, though, came the 20th to the 21st, depending on where you are in the world, of February this year. And so now we kind of have seen since then a lot of things that are coming into place around money stuff. But then also, I think it's become very apparent how, oh, hey, what's up, Andy? Good to see you. I think it's become very apparent how in these last couple of months, how much and how far we've gone with making money God. At the same time, we're seeing these things that are going on over in Iran. And then there's the whole money aspect to this stuff in Iran as well. So all of these things are connected, and we're really going to pick it apart, go into it, and just give kind of a framework that a lot of people can work with for the year ahead, the years ahead, and just the shifts that we're going to see, and be able to navigate these things without having a lot of fear around them. So yes, I've got right here the Ram returns, and we just went over that. So let's kind of get to the next one here. Like I said, guys, I don't even really know how this is structured. I just put all the information in I found the last week of research, and then it's just all laid out. I was able to kind of scan the last one. This is the newer version with some of the fixes I wanted. So let's get to it. And so. And I really like this explanation too. Neptune dissolves in Aries every 165 years. Two prophetic frameworks anticipated this exact moment from opposite ends of the world. Iranian 12 verse Shiism, and this gets into like Shiite or like Shia, and the different types of Islam. And we're going to kind of do a little breakdown of Islam. It'll be short. We'll do a little breakdown of Islam, of the eschatology itself. We'll get into some key figures, and then we'll be able to put some predictions together and see how it's reflecting in this current cycle of Neptune Aries. But okay, here we go. Iranian 12er Shiism, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, which has waited 1,150 years for its hidden imam, and we'll talk about what the imam is, and a sleeping American clairvoyant who saw the hope of the world rising out of Russia. And it's interesting because we have this Russia connection to Iran. So and a lot of people would say that Russia is the overpower, and I've went into this as well, the overpower, or it's like the best word I can come up with for Iran. They're sending them all sorts of drone stuff, and there's like the whole money and oil thing going on. Another thing that's going on alongside this, but I'll get into this more tomorrow in my news stream, is the meeting that Trump had over in China and stuff. And so, I'm looking at that, and that seems like this last ditch effort to keep afloat the failing economic system we have right now. But I will get into that tomorrow. Just something interesting to have in the background. But yes, the sleeping American clairvoyant, though, this is Edgar Cayce. So we're going to get into him and how he even relates into this, oddly enough. Edgar Cayce is someone who's called the sleeping psychic. And he had amazing readings. And he was actually born just at the close of the last Neptune in Aries cycle. Both at the same window. The current cycle, 2025 to 2039, mirrors 1861 to 1875 with uncanny precision. The whole story is held together by water. And this is where I'm going to get into the whole water dynamic with money itself. So what is the point, Andy? Hey, I wish I could tell people what the point of everything is, but I just try to do my best in uncovering things and making connections. I find the best understanding comes from just the connections that you can make and the ones that aren't really accessible to everyone. All right. And then, so we've got just a couple dates here. These are some of the dates from the Civil War. And then we've got some future dates coming up, and then these current dates. I already went over the current dates that we have here. A really interesting thing, at least with all the charts that I'm pulling today, which go back, I would say, like the last 2,000 years. An interesting thing is a lot of these dates fall in April, and late April too. So when the sun is getting close to hitting that anaretic degree in Aries, and you have all these other Aries placements like Mercury and such that are going to be close by, I find that to be really interesting, and we'll get into that with the charts and all that. But yeah, April 12th, 1861, Fort Sumter falls, and then April 13th, the next day, that's when Neptune fully ingresses Aries there. The interesting thing about when Fort Sumter falls is it's actually in the critical, the anaretic degree, for anyone who doesn't know, it's the critical degree, it's the last degree of the zodiac. So that we have that anaretic degree of Neptune in Pisces going on, like right when Fort Sumter, which kicks off the whole Civil War, starts. And even funnier than that, when you get into smaller things than just the degrees, then that they're called minutes. So it's like the degrees within the degrees, if you will. And with those minutes, it was even at the like anaretic minute when Fort Sumter fell. Or fell rather, but so I found that to be really interesting. We'll get into it though. Yeah, and then but I went over a lot of this stuff already, and then this future stuff here. Okay. U.S. Pluto. Yeah, that's I guess like that's I'll ignore like those last two because that's a little funky there, but everything else is right. So at least I can kind of like free flow with this, even though I didn't have time to really look over this. Not a metaphor, planetary weather. Neptune dissolves whatever sign it's in. In Aries, it dissolves sovereignty, the warrior archetype, the will, the blade. The Civil War archetype is not a metaphor right now. It is live planetary weather. And let me just make sure I have the proper one up here. Okay, I do. I'm just making sure. Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to get into Islamic eschatology now, and just really what their idea of the end times will look like, and what we've seen happen related to Islam and the eschatology, the mechanisms behind the eschatology in these last cycles. And then we'll of course take a little side ramp onto the Civil War and God as money, how that's coming in now again. And I mean, we've really seen it, but we'll kind of get into some of these little details here. All right, yeah, I'm seeing like a couple like weird repeat letters, but just bear with me here, with some of this stuff. So it looks like it's good for the most part, though. Right here we've got Yam. Okay, what is it? Yam al-Qiyamah. I made sure to put the pronunciation next to it because we're going to kind of be looking at another language here, guys, at Arabic. So I have like pretty much in every instantiation of a lot of these words, this is the word for the day of judgment that they have. I do have the pronunciation right next to it that you can kind of look and see on the screen there. This is their day of judgment, Yam al-Qiyamah. And this is where all souls are resurrected, all are judged. But before that day, a sequence of signs and figures unfolds. So we have 4 core figures that define the prophetic stage. So there's a stage in this called the prophetic stage. And then there's 3 end times figures that appear in the war that precedes this end time day. And we'll get into who those figures are. So these are the 4 core figures right here that come in like that rise in the lead up here. So we've got Al-Mahdi, and this is the guided one, a messianic figure who appears before the end. Sunni, not yet alive, appears in Mecca. Shia, already alive. Muhammad, and this is Muhammad al-Mahdi, the 12th Imam. He was born in 896 CE. So this isn't the Prophet Muhammad. This is a different Muhammad, but he went under the name al-Mahdi, and this was of course in another cycle. another Neptune Aries cycle in which he rose and became a messianic figure. So this is something in present day times that we can expect. I know, right? Uranus and Gemini. I love that Esperanza. It's the Uranus and Gemini with the technology, everything coming in the twos. I'm like, okay. That was one of the things I told it to correct when I looked over, and I thought it did, but I just simply didn't have the time to go over it. I'm like, we're just gonna wing it. I know this stuff in my head for the most part. So, yeah, Muhammad al-Mahdi, the 12th Imam, born 869 CE, and then hidden since 874. So this is a thing too, where they talk about this thing called occultation. And if it's not in here, I'll make sure to look it up here. But it seems to be this period of prayer where they go into like almost hiding. I mean, it's literally called occultation, So the occult, what's hidden, that kind of stuff, like the moon occults the sun during a solar eclipse, that kind of thing. And then we have another figure here, Isa, which is Jesus, essentially. But like they think that Isa was not crucified, or Jesus was not crucified, but was raised to heaven and will descend at what's called the White Minaret of Damascus, slays the Dajjal, and we're going to get into who the Dajjal is in this next like square here. Slays the Dajjal, marries, dies, is buried beside the Prophet, affirms Islam, and rules with the Mahdi. And remember, the Mahdi is the guided one we just talked about. And then we've got Al-Masih ad-Dajjal, and that's well, we will say Dajjal for short though when we're talking about this. And this is I guess you could say the Antichrist, the deceiving Messiah. So yeah, the Islamic Antichrist, one-eyed, and I've heard this before in other systems too. That the Antichrist would have some type of facial deformity, or even just some deformity in general. And I've even heard the idea of one-eyed. Deceives humanity with apparent miracles and material abundance, claiming divinity, killed by Isa at the gate of Lud. And then we've got this, which gets into a lot of information I've recently got into, which wasn't even necessarily related to this presentation. This was like a month back I got into this, but and this is oh gosh, there's not a pronunciation next to this one, but Yajuj wa Majuj. But I will refer to this as Gog and Magog, because this is what it's typically known from. And Gog and Magog is this, I guess, these people who are released at some point upon the world to cause destruction and havoc, and then end up being destroyed by divine intervention. And whether or not that's by Isa or Jesus, like, we'll kind of get deeper into all this stuff, but Gog and Magog is really important. I believe Edgar Cayce also refers to Gog and Magog. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this here. Let me get a little drink. All right. The war before the day. So, and this is what we were just referring to here, how in the lead up in this eschatology, there's going to be a lot of wars that pop off, and this is the time frame. And I do need to say, so we are in this time frame, but we even had this in the last Trinity of Convergence stream that I did. And what it was is that everyone thinks it's the end times, but it's not actually the end times. So I see no reason to think that this would be any different. And especially now that we've left this last 14 years of Neptune and Pisces, I think it's really good for us to anchor ourselves into, and not telling you what to believe or anything, but just into this idea and really believing in oneself spiritually, and not believing in some external force, some external Bible or holy book or anything like that. And they have beautiful things in them. I've said this before, I identify as a Christian, so I'm not knocking it. I know what beauty religion can bring to people, and what salvation it can bring. But if this has happened in every cycle before, sure, it's going to be on a much bigger scale, because we're hitting all three of these cycles for the first time, and I think it's like 4,000 years or something, like roughly 4,000 years. I was just doing a thread on it. I think that was the number I came up with off my research, was around 4,000 years was the last time we had all three of these planets in the same sign. But even back then when that happened, they are not in the same sign, but in the signs they're currently in, all three of these outer planets. But the last time, they didn't all come in in 1 year. And that last time that I'm referring to, which is roughly, I think it's like, I'm trying to like do the math here, I guess. It was like roughly 2000 BCE. Don't quote me on that, but what I do know for that is that it was during the collapse of the Bronze Age period. And so this is kind of why I talk about this is not just a once in a lifetime shift that we've come into in our personal lives, in the world itself, but a once in a civilizational shift that we're in. And the things that we're going to see in this lifetime, first of all, we signed up for it, so don't get scared about it. And I think if there's a discomfort that comes with this idea of all the chaos that's going to come in, all these systems that are going to be burning down, how much have you sold into this current system, which we all know is fake? It's just something to ask yourself, But the war before the day. So, Al-Sufyani, the anti-Mahdi, a tyrant descended from Abu Sufyan, rises in Syria. Now, I want to say here with rises in Syria, this is talking about the old Syria. The old Syria included modern-day Israel. That is something we should note here, because rises in Syria conquers Iraq. Well, that's interesting. We just conquered Iraq, and I think we're just finding out. A lot of people, I guess, some of us aren't just finding out, if you know what I mean. But a lot of people are just finding out that we only went into Iraq for Israel. And so conquers Iraq and the Hijaz with great cruelty before being defeated by the Mahdi's forces. And so you could even start to draw these parallels, like, is this Benjamin Netanyahu? Is this the power behind him? Are these powers going to surface? This is that Pluto and Aquarius time where I feel like things are going to come up and present themselves to the collective that have been running in the background for a long time. So these are just kind of things that we can run in our head and ask ourselves that are really, really interesting to ask, because in the context of the old world, this really describes modern day Israel. And then, this speaks to and you guys are going to love it when I get into the next one, which is Pluto and Aquarius, and that deals with Judaic eschatology, because I think this is really going to drive a point like this home. And then we've got Al-Khurasani. And this one is very interesting, okay? This is something that's really stuck in my head. But this is a pious leader who marches from Khorasan, which is northeastern Iran, to Central Asia to support the Mahdi. And remember, the Mahdi is the savior. So the Mahdi is going to be supported at some point. Someone that is viewed as this savior figure will be supported by someone in Iran. This could even be, though, with the description they're giving, this could be someone from Russia. So this gets into this play I'm talking about between Russia and Iran going on right now. And then, I will switch back over to here. We're not going to look at the chart just yet, but I've shown people this for a long time now. For the last, 3-4 weeks, I've been bringing up this chart here and there to talk about the way that we really can, some type of way we can expect to see the New World powers come in. And I'm going to do a whole thing on this. This is going to be part of my 4th of July terror attack or disclosure 4th of July conjunction stream I'm going to do. It's going to kind of incorporate a lot of the charts from these other countries. Like the chart of Russia, the chart of Iran. We're going to look at the chart of Iran again today, though. We'll take a little peek at it. But a lot of these charts we'll kind of look at, and we'll be able to line these up with how it seems to make sense with this, and a whole Western Hemisphere control that seems to be getting set up by the Trump administration here, preparing us for some type of war. And this war is going to look very different. This gets into the whole placement of Uranus, Gemini. Last time it was in Uranus was in Gemini was World War II. The war looked different. People thought it would be trench warfare, just like the last one. It wasn't. It ended up looking very different. New technologies coming in that are used for warfare. So this is where I have my prediction of an AI arms race that comes, and we're needing to shift everything to a Western Hemisphere control. But at the same time, there's going to be conflict that's going on in the USA. And this is going to be, whether you want to say it's conflict between the right and the left, but this is the Civil War reliving itself. We've never hashed this stuff out from the Civil War. That it was really just brushed under the rug. And so now this stuff is going to come back. And of course, it's going to come up and appear in these racial ways too. But that, like, really what you need to realize is the racial stuff with the Civil War, that was more for the normies. You know, that was for the peasants, if you will. Like, that's not what the elites who were running this war were thinking of. It was a war about money and about who was going to really take the hit as they transitioned into a new type of financial system. But we'll go much deeper into that. We'll kind of get through a couple slides here, pull up a chart, and get this thing moving here. Here we go, right here. Okay. So yeah, that black banner guy, I find that to be really interesting. And so it doesn't even need to be a black banner itself, but keep an eye out for someone who's coming to support a savior figure there's going to be a motif of black clothing, black banner, and this is something we'll see. I personally think we'll see this within 3 to 4 years. I know this is a longer transit, but a lot of these charts we're going to look at, it was about year 3 or 4 where you started to see these things really manifest from the Neptune and Aries. And I would even say, I mean, it could be as soon as 2 years, it could be a little farther out. With these charts, it was also counting the ingress initially and then the retrograde out. So if with that being the case, you could say that we're actually now entering year 2 of Neptune Aries, essentially, if you're going to define it that way. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there. And then Al-Yamani, and this is someone from Yemen. So this is going to be like someone from the like Saudi Arabia area, essentially. You know, I mean, unless let me make sure I'm not like viewing my maps wrong. Let's just type in, like, I'm pretty sure I know the Middle East like that. Like, yeah, Yemen. This is like around Saudi Arabia right here. So just got to make sure. I want to be accurate for you guys. And this person, Al-Yamani, righteous leader who calls people to truth and joins the Mahdi. So this is going to also be so all these people in the Middle East are going to start to unify behind this person they're defining as a savior, a Messiah, our savior figure. And it's just so important because if you're equipped with this information, the things going on will make so much more sense as they unfold. Fade to black. Oh yeah. If you're hopping in there, I'll see you in a little bit, or I'll see you later. But thanks for stopping by, Esperance. I don't know if you're going or not though. So. The map that won't go away. So the axis of resistance overlay. So Iran, Assad, Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza. This is the contemporary geopolitical alliance maps, and they're mapping cleanly into this eschatology right now. They follow this eschatology, and I mean, I wouldn't say because with some of these charts you see them in, just like when we did Uranus and Gemini. There were some things that like got seeded in those like last degrees, or just in Uranus Taurus in general, in that prior cycle, in the prior zodiac it was in. And so with this, we've seen that these things have been seeded in the prior zodiac. And then we're going into this time of Neptune Aries. We're going to look at Iran's chart. It has the sun in Iran. So this really is going to dissolve, the sovereignty of Iran in a strange way. But with that Uranus Gemini, it's not going to quite look how we expect it to look. It's always like that Uranus Gemini like throws that curveball. It doesn't look how you expect it to. It's the last thing you're thinking of. So we can think of that as being the fall of Iran, but I actually don't quite think so. I think you come into, there's a dissolution of the sovereignty, and a new type of sovereignty comes in. This is what we see in these prior time periods. So the Houthis here openly invoke the Yamani role. Iran is Khorasan. Damascus is where Isa will descend. The participants know the script. Whether they are reading it or living it is a question that is going to drive the next decade. And let's just make sure, let's type in Damascus here. That was something I meant to, oh yeah, so this is in Syria. So we'll have that area, that's going to be in the Syria area here. Right over here. And interestingly enough, with Syria, we just did see the last leader there got deposed. And now we have CIA running the show over there in Syria. Oh, the black symbolism. Oh, yeah, that's right. You are going live, but you were going to go live and then go to fade to black after. Let me see. Oh, yeah, so that we got that here. And Okay, just wanted to kind of have it laid out for you guys, because even if I just describe it, it's like it's better to just have the map there. But I actually, to be fair, I meant to look up the whole idea of Damascus and where it is in modern day. Okay, and then so now we're kind of going to get into Casey. We're going to throw in a couple of these other things. You got that background. We'll throw in the Casey stuff, then the Civil War stuff. Then we're going to thread it all together, and that's kind of where we can start to blow your minds and everything. But so Edgar Casey, I have his chart here, so we'll kind of pull up his chart. That's actually the I guess I didn't realize that would be the first one. You know what we'll do? We're getting into Edgar Casey now, but let's actually go just to this first chart here, Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So this is the conjunction we had, Saturn-Neptune. I did this as a Washington, D.C. chart, since, you know, America, for that chart, you're kind of going to use, I mean, I guess it was founded in Pennsylvania, but, you know, close enough. I just figured D.C. is a good place to run that chart. I did it as a noon chart, so we're not going to be using houses for this. But this is like as close as I could get the conjunction on Astro. But yeah, you got right up here, you got Neptune and Saturn in Aries. That's the conjunction that we had earlier in February. And then you've also got all this stuff in Pisces. So this is, and I had been talking about it really since January, or since like December, I think it was. Esperanza was there. Remember, you actually, like, I think I said it for the first time on your stream, Esperanza. But we had this lineup that started to form in like Capricorn of all the planets, and I viewed it as this huge initiation. And so whatever you had going on around that time, December, January, you know, even like late November, all that, like that really was this initiation that we went into. And now, as we currently have all the planets separating, this isn't the current chart though, mind you, but currently we have the planets starting to separate, kind of go their own speeds, get settled in, you know, for these bigger planets and all that. This is where you see these things unfolding in your life and the direction it's pushing you into. But really, this moment was pretty defining for a lot of people sometime around the 21st of February. I know for myself, I moved into a home. I got this office. You know, I got pushed into doing this. Like, I'm not one to be on camera, like, and all. I feel like people project that onto me, but I'm not someone who really likes to be on camera. I like to keep to myself. I like to do my research. But the reason the universe really told me, like, hey, you know all this stuff, you need to like get this out to people. You spent all these years doing massive amounts of research, like, why don't you thread these things together and present it to people? And this has to do with a Chiron in Leo that I've got too. Really deals with not really wanting to be front and center all the time, ego wounds and stuff like that. We won't get into my own stuff though. But yeah, this is yeah, really, Esperanza. Esperanza knows my chart probably better than I do sometimes, I swear. But yeah, with this, and then, you know, we still have that North Node in Pisces. This is kind of just like a general, I'm kind of just giving a little general astrology and riffing right now, because this is such a powerful conjunction, and I haven't really sat here and gone over it. Like in one particular video, I just touch on it. But, and then when we have that conjunction, you know, it's tough to say, because when it's exact, we've got it in these last degrees of Aries. The moon is in the last degrees of Aries here. So I think it's pretty safe to say, even if you're like messing with it a little bit, it should still be in Aries there with that moon when you have that exact conjunction. And then you've got Uranus over here squaring Mars in Aquarius here. So it's kind of like what I view that as with the square there. I mean, of course, Aquarius is going to deal with the collective and all that, and so this was kind of the we had these initiations that came in, and this is the moment, like, off to the races. Here we go. You know, we are about to, as Uranus moves out and now is in Gemini. This was, I view that square as saying, like, hey, like, the world's going to change forever. And you need to be ready for that. And it's going to change for all people forever. And we really see these new things they're trying to roll in. Like, every single news day is crazy. I mean, it's, and this is where you need to know, how am I going to stay grounded during this time? Like, for me personally, I just view the news as entertainment. I absolutely love politics, love the news. But I notice not everyone is like that, and they can get very emotional about these things and all that. But the quality of this time, remember, the last 14 years has been, oh, well, how does that make you feel? Oh, okay. Oh, I don't like that. Like that makes me feel like this. That offends me. That's over. That's over. And if that's the kind of thing, like something offensive, if someone, saying the N word around, like if that's gonna be and that's just an example I have. Like I'm not saying like make it okay for people to go around saying the N word or whatever, but like there needs to be like some kind of measure on people's emotions and what, like how are you going to handle this stuff, because this Neptune, Saturn, and Aries, this is like, what are you doing in the world? What actions are you taking? No one's going to sit around and hold your hand anymore for how something makes you feel, or you don't like what this person said. If you don't like what this person said, we've got the new technology coming in, Uranus and Gemini, where you can actually put your voice out there. And I covered this in the last stream, how Martin Luther during the Protestant Reformation, like he got to this idea where he made it happen to where everyone could become their own pope. He attacked that power, and what we see now is through AI, through social media, through the ways that we can project these things out to the world. If you want to push back on something, you're not going to be able to sit around and whine about it and expect that the voting process is going to give that to you. Like, we as people need to take our power back. We need to be able to do that in a firm way. And I'm telling you, in 2-3 years time, like if you start going up like, oh well, they said this and blah, people are gonna roll their fucking eyes at you. No one cares anymore. The fatigue is here, where everyone is just so over like these feelings and all that. It's like, no, like let's get this shit done. Let's do this, okay? We have a world to change. So just a little bit on this conjunction, giving you a little bit of the quality. And then with that Jupiter trining too, the trine going up to Venus and all that. But Jupiter's kind of really been making all these aspects up, especially lately, these harder aspects. So this kind of deals with the home situation, like from that time to now, like has the stuff at home been taken care of and all that, like that's really a big theme right now. Whatever, and it all depends on the layout of your chart and all that, but there's some theme of the home life coming up and being too much. I say Jupiter is the planet of too much, so there's like some aspect of the home where things have become too much, and this could be like your personal tribe, this can be all that stuff, and it's all going to depend on your chart. But I don't want to get sidetracked. I kind of just went on a riff there, sorry. But we were talking about Edgar Cayce. So born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. So 2 years after the previous Neptune and Aries cycle closed. So we can expect to see, we're going to see all these weird things leading up. And so this is that like 3, 4, 5 year time frame I kind of gave you earlier. But I don't want that to be confused with the actual Messiah themselves showing up. Like, you're going to see people who come forward who become, because there's the difference between the Messiah and then the leader in all those previous figures that I went over, like these messianic leaders versus the actual Messiah person. So expect to see someone that people are going to project onto the next few years as the Messiah, as someone that people get behind and all that. But ultimately, once the cycle closes out in 14 years from now, or like 13, 14 years, then that's I think where you start to see a lot of people come online in the same way Edgar Cayce did, in the same way I think it was the Prophet Muhammad too, because we've got his chart we're going to look at. But all of this stuff, so Edgar Cayce, he came out of this last transit and he predicted a lot of these things that we're now seeing coming up. So we'll have kind of a similar thing going on towards the end of this cycle, where someone comes up who can predict things, who all this, and all of this is a little bit of wiggle room. I'm just trying to like differentiate these. I'm not saying what's what. I'm just giving you kind of this overall quality of it, So what Edgar Cayce did, he did around 14,000 trance readings over 40 plus years. And you'll see as we look at a couple of his trance readings, because there's like 2 or 3 in particular. Hey, what's going on, PMSO? Really good to see you. You'll see with Edgar Cayce in particular, he predicted a lot of stuff that fits in with the Islamic eschatology, which seems to be this time that we're entering. With Edgar Cayce's predictions, a lot of them were medical. So he would diagnose illnesses that he had no way to know for people that he never met. These readings, they've got the ARE. This is the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. And that they deal with all the Edgar Cayce stuff. They're kind of hit or miss. They try to not go too out there with the stuff. So there's plenty of stuff that is not backed by the ARE, that is Edgar Casey's stuff. It's all recorded and everything like that. So I wouldn't say stay away from the ARE, but I saw an interview last year and a half ago, something like that, of the main dude from the ARE, and I don't know, he rubbed me the wrong way, gave me the heebie-jeebies. Just gonna be honest about that. So, but I mean, it's good for preserving the stuff. It is good for that, but they definitely kind of clamp down on it going too far out there with the people who are representing the ARE. Yeah, definitely, PMSO. You're using discernment with them there. It's like interesting because there's sometimes I like them, but other times I'm kind of like, what are you guys talking about? So his prophetic career was 1901 to 1944. And then that's interesting too, because you see that like lead up to the Uranus and Gemini period as well. The prior Uranus and Gemini period that we had. Covers the entire intercycle period between the last Neptune, Aries, and Ars. So that's kind of this interesting play that we get here. And it's going to be so fascinating with his predictions. We'll pull up his chart here real quick. He's like further down, huh? He's one of these. Here he is, Edgar Casey. So first of all, I just love this beautiful kite that he has. It's just gorgeous. Like, my goodness, you can just really tell with everything, with when you see these patterns on a chart, like either you're going to see a mystic rectangle or a kite or something with these people who are deep mystics or who are meant to change something in the world or do something major, at least in a positive way. That's just my experience, though. I haven't looked at the amount of charts like some people have looked at, but that is my experience with that. Sun in 28-degree Pisces. And I had this chart just kicking around because I looked at it when we had the death of David Wilcock, because I do think there was some, I truly think that David Wilcock, and that's not to say that David Wilcock got everything right or I put him on this type of pedestal. Hey, how's it going, folks? 2026. What chart is that? This chart I'm looking at now is the chart of Edgar Casey. We're going to tie him in to the Islamic Eschatology with some of the predictions that he made. So I just wanted to kind of pull up his chart and look a little bit, see some of the things, because we're going to pull up the Prophet Muhammad's chart as well. So I just wanted to, but yeah, he's a Pisces there. And then we also have that with David Wilcock being a Pisces. There are some other, I don't have David Wilcock's chart handy, but there's some interesting similarities between the chart for sure. But like with the whole David Wilcock thing, I went into that in a prior stream. I'm not going to re-unpack that because we've got info to get through on this. But let's also see. And he's got the moon in Taurus too. This is part of that kite pattern that he has. And really, the sun itself isn't even part of the kite pattern. It really is it looks like it's the Saturn and it's Saturn, Venus, and Mercury, and it might even be the North Node. That like there's a lot of them in there. I don't want to zoom in because it'll mess up my zoom on all my other tabs, but I mean I'm almost seeing 4 squares there, and then those all go in trine to his Mars there. So this is where you kind of see, and then with the aspect from his Sun over to Jupiter too, where it became too much, he would really become depleted after doing these readings, and he would be told to slow down and all that. And I believe the reason for his death was actually a stroke, which is interesting because a stroke is something in the head. If you were to take the whole thing of David Wilcock being an reincarnation of Edgar Casey, which Edgar Casey talked about the issues he had in prior past lives, and those were the issues that David Wilcock ended up having and that he was worried about having in his next reincarnation, if you want to view it chronologically. But we're just wrapping up with this chart here. We'll kind of keep moving. But that was an interesting thing too. And so you saw something similar in David's chart with these heavy Pisces things, these squares, where it came into being too much for like a lot of things and like going way too out there and stuff. I feel like Edgar Casey definitely grounded that a little bit better than David was able to. But also, all of a sudden now we have this new stuff coming out about a patent that literally is mind control. It lets people, it has to deal with graphene and like the DNA and all this stuff. This is something I've been seeing circulating, which I find very interesting because my whole thing, my straw man argument before I knew anything about what happened with David and all that is like, well, maybe he did actually shoot himself, but there was some type of energy weapon being used on him, or to really alter his state of being, to bring forward the subconscious. And it's like, as these things are starting to come out, it's seeming more and more like, oh, okay, well, if just the mention of it in science is coming out, and we know how far ahead our military is and our intelligence agencies and all that, something to consider. But yeah, that's Edgar Casey's chart. Let's get back here. So one of the readings that he gave was, out of Russia comes the hope of the world. But we'll read this word for word here. On Russia's religious development will come the greater hope of the world. Then that one or group that is closer in its relationships may fare the better in the gradual changes and final settlement of conditions as to the rule of the world. And so this is why I'm bringing out that Russia-Iran connection too, because this gets into just the Islamic eschatology, this whole idea of whether you want to say it's Khazar or that, but that area of Central Asia, northern Iran, that there's that interplay between this, and this ties into the Islamic eschatology. So Russia does come into the play here. Russia also being Eastern Orthodox, I didn't really connect a lot of the Eastern Orthodoxy stuff to my Uranus and Gemini stream, which dealt with the Christian eschatology. It was more Protestant, evangelical, that kind of stuff. And then that got even into Christian Zionism and the birth and seeding of that during the prior Uranus and Gemini. Not the prior, I'm sorry, it was like 2 cycles before that. Uranus and Gemini cycle. But you've seen the growth ever since Martin Luther during Uranus and Gemini, where he wrote On the Jews and Their Lies. That is a book that Martin Luther, the founder of Lutheranism, wrote. And then you saw this progressive, every Uranus and Gemini, this progressive trend of what is now the instantiation of Christian Zionism. And this is why I find it so important to get into the planets representing each one of these, because their play, and when they come in at the same time, you see this exchange between. So now all these planets have come in at the same time. Imagine the exchange we're going to see between all of these different religions, all of the different prophecies for end times, and the things we will see unfold in this world. It's an amazing time to be alive, really. I mean, if you came here just to like chill and have the white picket fence life, I'm sorry to break it to you. That's not the life you're going to have. Sorry. Maybe eventually, but we got to like fix some things first, All right, 6 months before he died. So this is a reading from him 6 months before, of course. In Russia, there comes the hope of the world. So he's got multiple of these. But look at this, reading 3,976, and this is part 29 of it, or like paragraph 29. So he was always doing this, and he would really tax himself and burn himself out. And then you can even make the argument that David Wilcock did the same thing too. And maybe that's why he leaned on substances like marijuana so heavily. But in Russia, there comes the hope of the world, not as that sometimes termed of the communistic, of the Bolshevistic, no, but freedom, that each man will live for his fellow man. The principle has been born there. It will take years for it to be crystallized. Yet out of Russia comes again the hope of the world, guided by what? That friendship with the nation that hath even set on its present monetary unit. In God we trust. So that's a fascinating thing to go over. We can unpack that. I mean, we can even make a mental note for monetary unit, in God we trust, and the Civil War stuff, which we're going to get into, which will deal with the money. And then we can tie in God as money, and how that is going to be really this thing that is what's pressed up against with Iran, because this whole idea of God as money is really this whole idea of God as, I just like noticed something. This whole idea of God as money is what Iran is pushing back against right now. If you look at just kind of what they're doing right now, because they're a hole in the whole monetary system working the way that they want it to work in order to bring in the new things that are going to be a part of the control grid and all that. Iran's actually, they don't want to be a part of that. They like where their sovereignty is at right now in terms of the oil they produce, the trade they do with the world, like not needing to be involved in the same fashion with the rest of the global market and all that, and these shifts coming up, they can actually come out on top in this incredible way by saying no to that, by holding to their principles. And their beliefs are so strong, it's stronger than the belief in money that people have. Essentially, they use it as like a tool more. Like, of course they use money, but it's very different when you're looking at the IRGC and the way that they operate and the way that they're willing to die for their beliefs. Like, there aren't a lot of people in America, they're willing to kill for their beliefs, but are they willing to die for their beliefs? Like, I don't see that as much here in America amongst at least the elites, you know. But you can make the argument for Christians here, for sure, but just not amongst the elites. All right. Casey's wider frame. So this is another chart we're going to look at. A New Age, 1958 to 1998, a 40-year window of awakening consciousness. And we did see that, you know, and there are people, maybe even in this chat, that were alive during this time, and they saw these different waves that came in of consciousness. And the astrology back then was incredible for it. This is where you get into like the peace and love hippie movement, all that. Oh, PMSO has got something here. But you have to remember, this is the biggest truth that a lot of people forget, is that Iran utilized American dollars and black marketed the American dollars to Iraq, and they can't do that anymore. Oh, that's really good to know. Yeah, I think you were actually telling me about that the other, well, this was a couple weeks ago, a few weeks ago rather. But yeah, and that's, yeah. And you know, it's funny, after you told me that, there was something else I saw that came up around that too. I'm trying to remember what I saw it from, but this guy broke it down in this incredible way. And but yeah, like right now they're trying to go into this. What I'm seeing with Iran is it's so funny too, because yeah, they utilized the dollar for so long, but now they're kind of acting like they're better than it. But it's more of what you were saying, of where they've been blocked from utilizing it in a certain way, and so they're kind of like flipping the table over, as it were. I think, as if that's fair to say. Let me know what you think about that, PMSO. But also a new root race too, souls reincarnating with expanded gifts to bring light to a waiting world. And you know, I mean, we can think of that as in a number of different ways. I just feel like each consecutive generation is bringing that in, and then maybe now with the human design bringing in the cross of the sleeping phoenix is where we start to see the like a major upgrade, because we've seen the progressive upgrade, but maybe we see a major upgrade in these new kids, or in everyone. These are just ideas to consider. So, and he also was of the idea that the second coming was not like Jesus appearing in the sky, but a planetary shift in consciousness. But I am going to pull up a chart that's 1998. Oh yeah, maybe that was Masaki. Yeah, I had to run. We had to go, and I wanted to talk more about that with you. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, we'll have to do a talk again sometime. I was just thinking about that in this last week. I'm like, dang, we got to talk again. Not Jesus appearing in the sky, a planetary shift in consciousness. A 1,000-year battle of Armageddon beginning 1999, a spiritual struggle, not a physical war. And then Earth changes, pole shift, coastal devastation. The literal timing didn't visibly happen. The framework absorbed into the apocalyptic spiritual landscape. So for these things that didn't come through with Casey, it's the same thing like with Nostradamus. And we'll actually get into like a Nostradamus thing too, which I found to be, or is the Nostradamus will be in the next stream, but that's really interesting. It has to do with the Antichrist. Yeah, I'll pull up the chart here, because my argument for the 1998 stuff, this is the last time we had Saturn in Aries. And so Saturn was in Aries, and it set up the structure for what we're about to see now, essentially. But we didn't have Neptune there. We had Neptune in Aquarius. So it was like dissolving and seeding, essentially, the things that for which we're going to see now unfold and everything, and it was feeding that into the collective. And so that with that Neptune in Aquarius, and now I'm noticing with a lot of people whose charts I'm reading, a lot of younger people, they've got all these things in Aquarius, including that Neptune in Aquarius. They've got like a lot of style. I'm seeing it with so many. So it's like these children were born and seeded here to bring in this higher consciousness, and it's a part of Gen Z. It's like a later part of Gen Z and an earlier part of Gen Alpha that I'm seeing that with. Let me get over here. Yeah, so we've got, I think it was right here. No, one of these. Here we go. Indigo Children era. So, and around this time, I think it gets into it more in the PowerPoint, but you had like the death of Princess Diana, and there was the death of like another big spiritual figure, like within a year. This was like a year before or after this. But really, this was the chart I settled on. I was like, oh, like what would be, this is kind of a broad thing to look at. And so I was like, well, you know what, let's just ask AI, and they kind of like nailed down this as to kind of be this middle point or good point right here that defines a lot of what we saw in this period, when we were in kind of right in the midst, or I'd say a little, well, I guess it's on the chart here. I was going to say I was about halfway through Saturn Aries. So yeah, like literally halfway through. But yeah, we've got and here's like all this Aries or Aquarius stuff right here. And of course the sun and the moon are fast moving. This is of course just during Aries, or I'm sorry, Aquarius season and all that. But then even as a lot of these start to move out, you've got like Neptune in the last degree of Capricorn. So there we go with that critical degree where it starts to bring something in. And then of course the structures that I mentioned, you can even bring that in there. I was thinking of the structures more in terms of Saturn there, and it being the last Aries cycle, but then you even have that right there with like just these structures that are being laid, these foundations being laid, and then the dissolving. Now that Neptune's coming through here, then you're going to have that dissolve. Oh, I didn't even see the chat. I'm sorry here. I'm going to see what you have to say here, PMS. So, well, the fact that the matter is on that too with the Iraqi dinar and the new government that's over there right now. The government is having to push out the Iranians. Oh, the new government, is that the... Oh yeah, because I know, I was hearing about this. There's the like democratic government right there that's having huge push and pull right now with the IRGC. I know, yeah, like I haven't, it's been hard for me to get reliable information on it though. That's the thing. But I know that that's going on. But whenever I dig on it, I have a hard time getting information that I can find to be reliable. Not that I don't find it to be true. It's just like, it's scant information, if that makes sense. But let me know what you've been able to find out about that democratic pushback that's going on between IRGC and them, because I know there are like people, I wouldn't go as far to say it's the way that the Trump administration is framing it, where like they're all trying to take to the streets and all this stuff, but I also don't think it's that they are all on the IRGC side either, because I feel like a lot of them are scared, and so they go out and do these like things celebrating the IRGC just so they don't get questioned or persecuted, and the people who don't go then get on a list, and they start to like really watch these people. And then there was the whole thing where they killed I don't think they killed as many as the Trump administration is saying, but I do think like quite a few people died, and it was the people that they tried to have, I'm forgetting the name of the group, but one of our proxy groups in the Middle East, I know we were giving them arms, but then they cut and run with the arms and didn't pay us. I don't know if it was the Houthis. I think it might have been the Houthis. It was one of those groups we have out there that, yeah, we like gave them a bunch of arms and like money and stuff, and they just cut and run. But it's because of how many times in the past we've effed them over, so I can't really blame them. But yeah, just with this chart, and I like how simple and straightforward this is too. You've got that Chiron in Scorpio. And I feel like that's going to be really useful for the generation that was born around this time. That Chiron Scorpio. And I mean, I'm kind of like close to this time. I've got some of these placements, but it's more like these people that were born around this time are really taking the baton. Like, as a millennial, like I'm here to like really like destroy things, like burn things down in a metaphysical sense, not like actually take to the streets and like do stuff. I'm not saying that, but yeah, I mean, never say never, right? But no, what I'm saying though is like what I've got is the Uranus Neptune conjunction in Capricorn. So that's kind of like, that's really more about like what from the spiritual realm, what from the ethereal realm can I bring into this reality and set up in a way so that that baton, that torch can be taken by the younger people, you know, who have that heavy Aquarian energy and who are going to thrive during this Pluto and Aquarius time. And then Pluto, of course, being the rulership of that Scorpio, them having the Chiron there. This is why a lot of them have been having a rough time, and it's going to be what makes them. So all of this, the Sufis and the Sunnis. Yeah, I do have some stuff on the Sufis and the Sunnis, the Sufis, and the Sunnis. Yeah, with the, I guess like, is that the same as Shia and Shiite, or right? Is that about right? But those are like actually like groups. Let me know. Like, this is kind of my weakest point is when it comes, which was what made this such a learning experience, this presentation so much fun, but is actually the Islamic stuff. So I try to like pay attention to all of that, but I get really, I mean, I kind of love the stuff going on in the US too, but I at least know where the countries are in the Middle East and a lot of history. But as far as the modern day groups and what the instantiations, what they've kind of went into, I could be a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, just we've kind of seen the chart here. I don't want to spend too much time on it. You know, they got North Node Virgo, South Node Pisces. And so it's interesting because we've got the opposite right now, North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo. So I've seen with a lot of people in this age group born in this time, it has been a lot more difficult. And I say this like it's a distant age group from me. I mean, it's only like people like 5 years younger than me or something like that. It would be the early Gen Zers. But still, this is what I'm seeing, is that they're dealing with a harder time. And then even, would that be and you've got that square to Pluto there, the Pluto and Sag with the Gen Zers. So that's really interesting. And this is just general, but I kind of made this an indigo children chart when we talk about the indigo children, or maybe even the crystal children. Some would say that like I'm technically indigo children and these would be more of the crystal children. But the whole point of me bringing up this chart is that Edgar Cayce had predicted this, that there would be people coming in under a new Christ consciousness. And even there was a book around this date that was released that sold millions of copies that dealt with Christ consciousness. This is where Christ consciousness first enters the lexicon for everything here. So let me get back over here. And then, yeah, we went over all that. Okay, so Khorasan connection. So Casey said hope comes out of Russia. Islamic Mahdism, and remember the Mahdi is the savior, says the Mahdi's vanguard rises from Khorasan. And remember, Khorasan was that area that was in the northern Iran, Central Asia, so like kind of between Iran and Russia there. Like that's that sweet spot. That's where I bring Russia into the fold on this. But rises from Khorasan with black banners. Remember the black banners thing, or the black something, the fade to black, as Esperanza said. Classical Khorasan extended into Russian Central Asia. The 2025 Russia-Iran Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty places Russia structurally behind the Khorasani axis. So this could even be like us seeing Russia coming in to defend Iran, because I think that the Iran-Israel thing serves as a proxy war between Russia and the United States. And especially with what you've seen with what just happened in China, that kind of throws a lot of this whole like China is our enemy thing out of the water. And I already kind of knew that because we use China for, like, China and us have such a symbiotic relationship, not just in terms of the production versus them buying our money and stuff like that, our bonds. Not even just that, but that's there as well. But a lot of people aren't aware of the elite recruitment that we do, and how like they all take a test in China, like a comprehension test or something like that, but essentially the equivalent to our SATs. that they take, but it's like a lot more serious and it affects your future in a major way. And based on what you get in that test, then you're able to move over. And it's not like this quite as much anymore, but it used to be like this for decades, where you're able to move over into the Ivy League schools. And then once you graduate from the Ivy League schools, you're kind of a free agent. You can like stay in the US if you want, or you can go back to China. A lot of them end up going back to China, and that's how they essentially do their elite recruitment, and they build up their elite class in China. So without us, like, they aren't able to have their elite recruitment in China and have like build up that class in the way. But another thing that comes into this is the elite overproduction. These are kind of things I'll get into later, but it's just like kind of just to really frame this. And that gets into the map right here that we talk about, where it kind of gets into this like Russia versus the US thing. And then because, and this is a whole thread to go down into, but the US is or I should say China is a reflection of the US. Like if you view the US and all power in general as a facade, as a mirage, as an illusion, like Plato's cave, as it were, because this is just the nature of our reality, then you can say that China is a facade of a facade. And you only need to go into the history of China, especially around the time that we got off the gold standard and made these new relations with China, to see that. But this is a whole thing I will unpack in another stream. I just want to kind of like really frame this as Russia and the US. And it's funny because of all the Russia collusion hoax and stuff to really say that, but it's kind of like humorous to me. But let's see here. Yeah, from a Casey reading, that same geography is where the hope of the world originates. And so this is where you see that connection that goes into Casey's prediction and then tying into the Islamic eschatology. And Casey was a Christian, by the way. He wasn't like over here trying to preach and he didn't even preach this in that framework, But yeah, two prophetic frameworks pointing at the same map. So 4 figures, one window, where Islamic eschatology and Casey's vision are pointing at the same person. So Jesus in Islamic tradition, not crucified, raised to heaven. We kind of went over this. I feel like I bridged a lot of this. 1980 transits. So we just pulled that chart so we can kind of get through this. Khorasani, pious leader. Yeah, we went through a lot of this. We'll kind of keep moving. The hidden imam returns. And and that's the Mahdi. And this is like someone who's, you could say, is already alive. Yeah, Muhammad. Oh yeah, and then we do have this chart, Muhammad al-Mahdi. I think I have this chart. The 12th Imam born 869 CE, hidden since 874. I think we kind of went over the bulk of this, guys. What I'm going to do is kind of just briefly scan this stuff. Yeah. Oh, this would be interesting here. Shia Muslims see the Mahdi, the Khorasani as vanguard, Isa as the co-ruler. That'd be like Jesus. Casey readers see Russia-backed spiritual catalyst. Christians see the second coming. Tech spiritualists see a syncretic techno-religious accelerationalist. And that is a possibility, honestly, because I feel like that's the thing that really brings in these end times, is because these people are all occultists, and this is something I've been reading in the last month, is how much of occultists these tech bros are, these AI leaders and all that. And then you have to wonder what the powers are behind them too. And this gets into the Plato's cave theory, of like what we're seeing is really just a projection of the true reality that's going on. And the elites pulling the strings behind the scenes, who we think are the elites are not even technically the elites. We don't ever see them. But these people they're fucking crazy. Like, I'm talking about the true elites that we never see, because if we're getting a shadow of that through the elites that are presented to us, I should just tell you how crazy they are. And they were talking about, like, we're summoning demons, we're summoning aliens through this. This is why it's called Project Stargate, the whole Trump administration thing that's going on with AI. Through I believe it was the Big Beautiful Bill where that first got released. It might have even been before the Big Beautiful Bill got passed, because I think it might have been an executive. It was very early in the administration last year. Let's see though. The precedent. This isn't the first attempt. Last time Saturn was in Aries, one Saturn cycle ago. Yep. And then, so I kind of went into that trial run. Yeah, but what was the stuff? Yeah, so the Maitreya, this was the guy, Benjamin Cream in the Maitreya, and he was the one who talked about one figure who embodies all messianic expectations simultaneously. And he had like predictions that didn't happen, but it feels like he was at least just tapping into the quality of the time and all this, because this lines up more. He died in 2016, but the predictions that he gave were late 1990s, that same time period that we looked into, and this is where the framework came up. So even the predictions that Casey didn't get right, there was something about that time period and that astrology that's important, and we see that reflected now with Saturn back in Aries. I also think that this was the last time that we saw the whole cloning thing, Lucy the sheep and the cloning stuff. So I think cloning will come back, like talk of cloning. We already see it, but and then maybe there's something that comes out around cloning. But yeah, it says, I like this here too. The framework went into the spiritual groundwater. If we name the synthesis now, we're picking up a thread that the previous Saturn in Aries already wove. And this is kind of what I said too. Indigo children, and then we've got yep, children with expanded gifts. We kind of went over all this because now we can get into the Civil War stuff, and then we can wrap it all together. I want to keep everyone here too long. We've been going about like an hour and a half. Yeah, I'm making pretty good time here. Christ consciousness goes pop. So maybe this is the guy I was thinking of. Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. So mass channel God, Christ voice through one guy. Tens of millions of copies sold. You are the divine. The second coming is internal. Thesis hit bestseller list right inside Casey's predicted second coming window. So that's very interesting. And this is also where Eckhart Tolle comes out with the power of now, which is, and we know Eckhart, or I guess it's Eckhart Tolle, made Christ consciousness a state, not a person. The now presence awakening framework that's now ambient in every yoga studio was born inside that Saturn in Aries. So this stuff is, we're going to see not only it coming back if it was forgotten, but if it's been being practiced since then, we see it kind of reach the next level. Where is this going to go to the next level? And that's why it's so good that Neptune's out of Pisces, because we had way too much of the Piscean stuff in the spiritual community where it was like all about like, oh, well, I'm just going to escape and not like be involved in the material world. And, I'm just going to like do mushrooms all day and stuff and smoke weed all day. And I'm guilty of it. Okay. Let's not anymore. Like, I'm so good on that energy. All right, Princess Diana dies in Paris. Mother Teresa dies in Calcutta. This was 6 days apart, by the way. So that's like what's really interesting there. There's just people who like that week in the field. Like this is like a smaller version of like losing the saints. And we're going to see that in such an expanded way too. So it's kind of like all these little things coming together where we're going up to the next octave of this stuff. Yeah, and then we kind of slot open, by the way. Nobody filled it. The slot is still open. Neptune in Aries is pressuring that vacancy. Because if you really think about it, no one did ever fill in that slot, that saint-like slot of Princess Diana. And, there's some things we're finding out about Mother Teresa for sure. I mean, at least I did years and years ago. And I always see them come back up. So maybe I won't comment on Mother Teresa. But every peacemaker summons its shadow. Yeah, so we had the Heaven's Gate suicides too. This is where it goes too far in a lot of this stuff, and the stuff to be careful of, the stuff we're going to see being revisited upon us. Like, oh, well, we're going to like just ascend. We're going to actually go and join up with like the aliens waiting for us and stuff like that. When they do alien disclosure, what do you think is going to happen? They're like, this kind of stuff will be coming back. And I think it will be coming back as soon as this year. Transcend the body to join the next level. We had the solar temple suicides, previous wave of millenarian cult death, and then Nostradamus' King of Terror prophecy, which is, maybe if it's written down in here, I'll get to it, but it's really more for the next stream. But it's a man in a blue turban who appears. He's very specific about the blue turban, and this ties in with what was it, with the not only the Islamic stuff, but then it ties in with like Jewish eschatology, and it just seems to all fit in, talking about someone from like, I want to make sure I'm remembering right, so I won't speak more on that, but it's essentially an agent of terror who comes in who wears a blue turban, and this would be, even though they're a blue turban wearing person, they are Caucasian. So it kind of gets this interesting play of the Caucasus Mountains, the Khazars, that Central Asia, the Khorasan area that we went into. That's really where you get this interesting play. That's something I want to unpack a little bit more, but there's a little sneak peek for that coming in. Every peacemaker archetype that gets summoned summons its shadow simultaneously, so the Sufyani Khorasani symmetry echoes here too. Then versus now, this is just some of the placements. Seeds then, yep, ran trial version of peacemaker archetype. Oh yeah, so, and this gets into these people we just went into. So Krem preached the synthesis, Walsh channeled the voice, Tolle mainstreamed the consciousness, Indigo children got named, Diana modeled the vacancy. And so we could even say that we see the Indigo children step into this role that Diana had, you know, or maybe it's just one of them or something, who knows, you know, but we do have that Pluto in Aquarius too. So it's like, it doesn't necessarily mean everyone gets their power back necessarily, but there is some level of power that comes back to the people, but you still have figures that come forward. And the whole thing that I like with Pluto and Aquarius is like, are you going to be someone, or are you going to fade into the background? Are you going to be the person watching and scrolling and not reacting to any of the content that's being put out there and fading into the background? Or are you going to be out there and doing the stuff? Because those are really kind of the two options that come with it. Although there is good stuff that comes, but it's a Plutonian thing. It comes through death, through destruction, through the phoenix energy, you know, like the rebirth that comes through death and destruction. And so what role are you going to take? Are you going to utilize this Aries energy, this Neptune in Aries that we have, and the Saturn there for the next 3 years, and actually be in the world building something that people can get behind, and you can involve people, and that can get people involved in these changes that we're going to see that are going to be very jarring? And Aries and the Aries age and the Ram of Ibrahim. So Aries energy alive in Islam in ways people haven't considered. So this is really talking, I'm kind of just burning through this, but this talks about how they sacrifice hundreds of millions of rams every year. And this is in modern day, but then also going back. So we've got the Aries age just in general, and that's 2150 BCE to 1 CE. So this is a longer age. We're just talking about an age, and we're not really getting the astrology involved, just the ram symbolism itself. But then also, you just have that ram symbolism with like the sacrificing of the rams, and there's kind of a lot of different threads you can go down with that. Islam claims its lineage through the Aries age patriarchs. The Kaaba is traditionally said to have been built by then, and this is Ibrahim and Ismail. And then Eid al-Adha, Festival of Sacrifice, this is what I'm talking about, commemorates Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Ismail and the ram god sent in his place. Hundreds of millions of rams ritually slaughtered worldwide every year. Hundreds of millions, think about that. Not just millions, hundreds of millions. So this is the kind of energy, and then where does that energy go? And now Neptune is in there, which is that spiritual planet. So what are we really kind of thinking with this? Like what has been accumulating in this? Like I would even argue that energy gets accumulated by Neptune in the whole pass around it does, and then it gets dispensed, and this is why we see a new savior figure in every Neptune in Aries. The Hajj preserves pre-Islamic Arabian rites tracing to the Aries age, including throwing of stones at pillars symbolizing the rejection of evil. Okay, let's get there. Planetary cycle. Earlier cycles, here we go. Cycle before Revelation. Muhammad was born around 570 CE, just after the cycle closes. Khazrau the first conquers Yemen 570. Mecca becomes the strategic node between Byzantium and Persia, the womb of Islam. So that's one cycle. Conquest of the West. Tariq ibn Zayed. Tariq ibn Zayed crosses Gibraltar. Within 7 years, the Umayyads control most of Iberia. Battle of Tours halts the expansion. So these are just like these time periods that come up where you see, you know, like whether it's like right out at the closing of it, you know, that kind of thing where but this is where you see a lot. And then this is the hidden. I think the second one is like slightly off. in terms of, it might not be, but I think it's, if I'm thinking about that right, it's like slightly off. Or no, this is 2. Well, yeah, but anyway. But the third one, though, I feel like that one is correct in terms of just doing the astrology in my head. The hidden imam. So this is what I was talking about earlier. Muhammad al-Mahdi goes into occultation in 874, 2 years before Neptune ingresses Aries. The doctrine of the hidden imam is articulated during this cycle. 12-year Shia eschatology is born in Neptune Aries weather. So just give me one moment here. I gotta I've gotta like run out the room for just a second. Sorry. All right, I'm back. All right, I'm trying to get here to the I think I overestimated my time frames and everything here. So Mongols, mystics, and conquerors. Just some more examples that we have here. Examples where you either have something going on with the mechanisms of the Islamic eschatology itself, or a savior figure rising up. And this deals with like a lot of the right here would be Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire. Yeah, it's a lot of the Mongolian stuff here. And then you see where he becomes kind of this savior figure for at least the culture that he's in. Okay, we got a couple more examples here. Okay, and then Iran, Shiism, and the 12th Imam. Okay, the only confessionally Mahdist state. So that's interesting. So you remember the Mahdi is the savior. And so apparently Iran is the only confessionally Mahdist state. They're the only ones who actually adhere to the Mahdist idea, which really makes sense when you see the alignments that Saudi Arabia is making in the world and everything. I mean, they're like cool with Israel. So that's kind of weird. But and this gets into Zoroastrianism too. This is like a carryover they have. This is their pre-Islamic religion that had the most developed eschatology of the ancient world. And they also had the Seoshyant, a savior who arrives at the end of time to defeat evil and resurrect the dead. So there's kind of that theme again. The Mahdi inherits the template. Shia Ismail founds the Safavid dynasty. Yep. From this moment, Iran is the world's only confessionally Mahdist state. Okay, we got some other stuff in there. And then, of course, April 1st, 1979 is where that state's declared. Now, I had a chart here because we were talking about... It was... Well, here's Iran right here. Iran's chart. So you got that Mercury, that Sun, that Mars, or actually not even Mercury. Mercury's in Pisces, excuse me. But you have the Sun right there in Aries. You got Juno there too. And then Aries as well. And but yeah, what's interesting is you got the eclipse. The eclipses here, I'm pretty sure the nodes are like right on top of Iran's prenatal eclipses. So that's really interesting to note. Not the lunar eclipse, excuse me, but it's on top of the north node's on top of the solar eclipse. So it's like massive change coming up, as we come in the next few years, there's going to be massive change now because Saturn is closing in on the Sun in Aries in Iran's chart, and this is in Iran's 8th house, by the way. So it's transformational. So there's a huge change we're going to see now, and then in the next few years, there's a dissolution that we were talking about with Neptune there, and then. We've got some other stuff. Neptune and Sag too. Like that's kind of where all the belief comes in. And then it's in the 4th house, so this is like deals with their homeland. and their beliefs and all that. And you see that really bleeding through with them, Uranus and Scorpio in the third house. So it's kind of like, I mean, it definitely is volatile for negotiations with them as well. Pluto and Libra. Anything else here really sticking out to me? I really want to make sure I get to all these connections and I don't drag this out to like 3 hours, guys. So I'm kind of like, I'm tearing through a little bit here. There's definitely a lot more I can give on these charts, but I want to I get off on these side tangents. You'll have to excuse me. And I'm trying to even kind of burn through this and get to the Civil War, because I'm like, we got to get through that. Yeah, well, and then here's the thing, is accelerating the return. Mahdist Shia movement, technically banned in Iran, but widely believed to influence elements of the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard. Some hold that the chaos of the end times should be accelerated to hasten the Mahdi's return. And so this is the thing we're seeing across the eschatologies too. Although I would say Islamic eschatology is almost a reaction or a response to the other two eschatologies of Judaism and Christianity. But Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, okay, president from 2005 to 13, publicly claimed Mahdi guidance. At one point described a halo around him as he addressed the UN General Assembly. That's interesting. Destination for petitions to the hidden imam. Thousands visit weekly. So this is the Jam Kiran Mosque near Qom, the destination for petitions to the hidden imam. Thousands visit weekly. So that's interesting. So I guess that there's like always a hidden imam. And that is fascinating. So like, and this is what gets into the occultation they talk about. You know, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, like in the comments after this is live, or like in the live stream chat right now. But, you know, and I can look at this stuff too, because I want to see city in Iran. Okay. What is it? All right. Does it say considered a holy site? Is the site of the shrine of Fatima bint Musa, sister of Imam Ali bin Musa Rata. Okay. And these imams stay hidden then? Let me just make sure. Yes. In Shia Islam, the 12th Imam is believed to be a living messianic figure, is physically present in the world but currently hidden from public view. So it's kind of like we were talking about. Okay. By divine will, a doctrine known as the occultation. That's fascinating. So all these periods dealt with occultations too that we're talking about. And I mean, we can get it. I mean, occultation's it's got astrology all over it too. So we want to talk occultations and all that stuff. That's kind of some predictions I can lay out later on, which would maybe be around some type of eclipse. You know what I mean? Like, what if that was? I'm not gonna go and say that that's like this year, but I mean, you know, I would even say maybe there will be eclipse around that or something like that. That's fascinating. I think that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool, honestly. The implication: a near-nuclear Iran is a state whose ruling theology contains a doctrine of redemptive cataclysm. Pressure from the outside reads as scriptural confirmation. Islam in the last cycle. And this last cycle, this was the Civil War cycle, so this is Islamic stuff going on too. Glory of God. Declares prophetic mission. Mirza Huzan Ali. Oh, okay. Oh, God. Okay. Baha'u'llah. Okay, that's how you pronounce it. Baha'u'llah declares his prophetic mission in the Garden of Ridvan. He emerges from Babism, a Shia messianic figure founded by the Bab in 1844 who claimed to be the gateway of the hidden Imam. The Bab was executed in 1850. Wow. See, I didn't even I knew that there was a connection here. I actually was more aware of the money connection. So this is why I love AI. It just gives us all this extra stuff and these connections we can make for these other time periods. The 1863 declaration launches the Baha'i faith, a worldwide religion that is theologically Iranian Shia Mahdism universalized. Born inside Neptune and Aries, the previous cycle's peacemaker. The template for what Casey predicted is sitting right here. And then I have his chart here for the declaration of him. So we'll pull that up here. A worldwide religion that is theologically Iranian Shia. That's cool. Well, I mean, you know what I mean when I say that. Just interesting, fascinating. Declares his prophetic mission in the Garden of Ridwan, and then he was later executed, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Huh. Yeah. So we'll look at that chart here. I was able to get a pretty accurate date on that. Or it's an accurate time, I mean. The date, of course, is accurate, but the time, which I found interesting, they put it was between, this declaration that he made was between 3 o'clock to 4:30. So I just put in 3:33. You know, I'm like, oh, let's just run with that. So it's a fairly accurate chart here. But yeah, this declaration, well, in this came, so the declaration came under all this Gemini energy: Moon Gemini, South Node Gemini, Venus Gemini, Uranus Gemini, of course, because this is that Civil War period, and then even Mars Gemini. So you got a Mars or a stellium in Gemini right here. It's fair to say that a good amount of these are going to fall in the 9th house that rules like belief and faith and all that. And then, of course, the North Node is in Sagittarius too. And so this is a huge area of belief for people in Iran. So I feel like this chart is very important and will be very relevant again this year. We've got a 0-degree Libra Saturn. So we had that opposition that came in earlier this year. And that's when we saw a lot of this peak stuff happen with Iran too, in this opposition. So their belief is really driving this. You know what I mean? And not so much that those represent the belief, but it's that the belief is in this chart. It's heavy belief in this chart. And then also the prenatal solar eclipse, the prior solar eclipse that happened to this was at 29 degrees Sagittarius. That just digs more into the belief. And it's in square to that Saturn. That's at the opposition back in February, at that current opposition that set all this in motion with the transiting Saturn, which is starting to close in on Iran's sun in Aries as well. So this is very interconnected. I'm going to definitely revisit this chart and get into some stuff. And that lunar eclipse prenatal is also in Gemini too. I didn't even mention that. So you got all these things just lined up in Gemini here. And so you have to remember that Uranus is going to be crossing all of these. It's probably like right stacked on top right now of Venus, but it's going to be crossing all these year after year, crossing all these placements here. And that's where you're going to see this kind of activate and see something very similar to this coming up. Also a Chiron in Pisces too. It's like this stuff stayed hidden. It stayed hidden during that Pisces. We had all those major Pisces transit, and now it's like coming forward. I swear there's going to be someone who presents themselves during this time period, during the next few years even. I feel like less than 10 years, probably around 5 years. You know what I mean? Maybe even like 4 years, 3, but probably like 5 years time, someone that really presents themselves. And I think it's going to be these waves of different people presenting themselves. And so these charts are going to be very valuable for us to have. All right. Yeah, Russia breaks Sufism. Sudan raises Ahmadi. Oh, wow. The Caucasus fall. Russia completes its conquest of the Caucasus. This would be like the Caucasus Mountains, you know. This is where you get the term Caucasian, of course. Imam Shamil, the Sufi warrior who led the Islamic resistance for 30 years, that's a Saturn cycle, had already surrendered. The war formally ends 1864 with mass deportation of the Circassian Muslims, the Muhajirit, one of the major demographic catastrophes of the 19th century. So be on the lookout for that too. There will be something else that's like this with Russia, and this gets into the map we looked at too. I'll pull that up again. But the map that we looked at, this gets into something here. There's some type of interplay between Iran and Russia, and I would say this is even after this map occurs. You know what I mean? Because they're an ally at this point, but it's like we can see that that may even shift. Now we're talking out towards the end of this cycle. If I was going to guess on something like that. And then Muhammad Ahmad begins gathering followers in Sudan, declares himself the Mahdi in 1881, 6 years after the cycle closes. Defeats British Egyptian forces, kills General Charles Good in Khartoum, rules Ahmad's state until 1898. The preparation happens entirely inside the Neptune Aries window. And so this would be, because 1861, yeah, so it's like, yeah, like that's about right, 6 years after the cycle closes. You could even argue that's why it didn't work out, something like that. But there we just get that interesting play. And then you have to also imagine that even him declaring himself, like this was clearly on his mind before, during that cycle. And then we have to wonder what was happening. And really, this guy, that years it's saying he's active, this was within the cycle of Neptune Aries. He just declared himself Mahdi outside of the cycle. And like I said, maybe this is why it didn't work. And Mahdi, of course, again, it would be the savior. So we really are digging into the savior pivot. We have the Suez Canal opens in the last cycle. And then also Union blockade cut off American cotton. Yeah, so there's this thing with cotton too. It's not really worth me getting into, but there was this interesting cotton play between the Egyptians and cotton, and then what we had from with America and cotton. And that the cotton is a huge part of the Civil War itself, a huge connection to make with that, because with the Civil War, of course, you had the cotton industry, which, that gets into the slaves. And this is where we could really get into, because I'm pretty sure we're coming up on it soon, really get into like what the Civil War was about. And it's really important to just like get into that money thing, because at this time during the Civil War, you had the Russians. You know what, I'm gonna like just go to a webcam shop. When you're getting into the Civil War and how it was truly about the money of it, of course they did view slaves as property, but the Russians had just released all their serfs, which were essentially slaves. And we had all of this new technology coming in. And this was another Uranus Gemini period where new technology was coming in, new upgrades of technology. So what we had, though, as that came in was, I forget what the name of the tool is, but essentially automated cotton picking. I just forget the name of the tool that it was and everything. But yeah, we had that come in. And so really what was being looked at by the South was, like, how am I, like, this slave is my property. Like, how am I going to get a return on investment? Also, how are they going to integrate into the society too? When you have a society of learned Englishmen, that was like kind of a thing that they're talking about too. But they wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be a drag on the economy, get them integrated in, get a return on the investment. And then you also had people funding both sides. And this gets into the currency wars. And this is where we'll see the currency wars coming on again and all that. And the main disagreement was more around like how the slavery ended, because everyone knew it was ending. This is the part that really isn't, unless it was like, what we would call normies nowadays. Sure, that like we're either super racist and like wanted to keep their slaves or whatever it is, or like thought in that kind of thing. But like I really, as I go back and research the Civil War with really good scholars who have done their research on it, this is what I really am seeing, is that it was all about currency wars, who was funding each side of it. And then there was this whole thing with gold behind it too, because this is the first time, as far as I believe, we switched to a fiat currency. We had the Lincoln greenbacks, and these were IOUs that essentially said that you could exchange them for gold, but it was very minute, microscopic amounts of gold. And so this is what we're going to see come back up again to give our currency more legitimacy. Like, oh, well, we've got these gold-backed cryptos, and like each one is worth, you have like such and such Bitcoin that's worth like this like minuscule amount, which essentially makes it fiat anyway, and into these IOUs, really. But yeah, so you had the Confederate notes and the Lincoln greenbacks, and there was this whole thing about it, who was funding each side. This gets into the European powers and all of that, and really with that kind of currency war is something we're going to see. And the Comstock lode, which was a silver mine, or silver vein rather, that we found in Nevada at the time of the Civil War, that could have really solved this issue, but instead it was kept under wraps and kept secret in order to do essentially like a deflationary act post Civil War. They kind of kept that under wraps. They used that they recalled the money supply once they won, and this would be the North that won. Of course, they were able to recall the money supply, and with all those IOUs they had out, that were these Lincoln greenbacks, plus the land that they seized from the southern states because they lost the war, they were able to use that to really equal out the balance books, is the best way to say it. To equal out those balance books. And this gets into a lot of deeper stuff. There's an amazing scholar on this, Joseph P. Farrell, who I found to be this connecting link on all of this stuff for me during the Civil War. But this is truly what the war was about. Is like, we knew slavery was ending, and it was more about, okay, which way is it going to end? The only thing with Lincoln and freeing the slaves that came from, just like I said at the beginning of the stream, he didn't actually care about freeing the slaves. A lot of the Republicans didn't care about freeing the slaves either, and that's not to, the Republican Party was founded to end like slavery, but there's also the fiscal aspect of the Republican Party, but that's in there. The original, the first state that founded a Republican Party, that is in their original thing, that they were founded to end slavery. So that's important to note. People say that the sides switched during the Civil War. I find this to be only like halfway true. There's the location in which the strongholds were for Republican and Democrats that switched sides. But ultimately, like back then, like one thing that you could say was reversed is that the Republicans were the virtue signalers back then. Right now you've got the Democrats as the virtue signalers, and it's all reflected in the illegal immigration stuff, because the illegal immigrants are the new slaves, essentially, if you really think about it. And so the Democrats are now taking in this role of no, don't kick them out. We need our slaves. Who's gonna pick our cotton? Oh, I'm sorry, who's gonna pick our berry? That whole kind of thing. I heard that from a great astrologer, one of my teachers. But no, that is really what it is who is going to do all the work that no one wants to do. And that's why you see the Trump administration pulled back on deporting all the immigrants because of things like that. And so I think the new plan is to use them in the upcoming war that we have. If we need bodies, first they'll scare everyone and do a draft on younger people and all that, which they'll totally fight back against. And then they'll be like, oh well, we got all these illegal immigrants, can we round them up? And then that's where you get people on board with rounding up them. Oh well, if it means me and my family don't have to go to war, okay, cool. So that's kind of where I'm really trying to show where the astrology is reflecting between that time and now. But yeah, and the Democrats were the Southerners back then. They were the ones who owned the slaves, and they're the ones who were no, you can't take them from us, because we and this wasn't all of them, because some of them knew that this was going to need to change because of what was going on in Russia. But it's just important to note these things, and so this is where you see now that is the carryover that we have. The only thing that changed, and this is only a recent change, because when you look at it, it was the Republicans, it was Republican-led coalitions that included Democrats in them, but the Republicans, if not for the Republicans, the Civil Rights Act would not have been passed. Okay, and you have to know how to look that stuff up. You go type that into Google, you're not going to get the right thing with AI, because they're just going to give you the numbers on who voted for what. But the people who were staunchly and vehemently against the Civil Rights Act, they were Democrats. Trust and believe that. And they were Southern Democrats. And this is where you saw the pivot over. It was not during the Civil War that you saw that pivot. Okay, this is in recent history that we saw that during the Civil Rights Act. And once that got passed, they kind of got the hint, the Democrats, and then that's where they took on this platform of racial stuff. And then you see they still continue to own black people, Democrats. Have you tried talking to other black people about voting anything other than Democrat? Because I have, and it never goes pretty. But they can never actually explain and articulate to me what these reasons are, why they continue to vote that way for a party that does nothing for them. Excuse me for my rant, but anyway, we'll kind of move on here. All right. Let me get that going. All right, the Civil War money story. So I kind of already went into all this like on just a monologue, but Lincoln's greenback, that was a debt-free fiat currency issued by the Treasury. We went into that. Not by bonded debt to European bankers. The first sovereign U.S. money since Andrew Jackson killed the second bank. Yeah, and then so it was this. It was the southern one that was the European bankers coming in too. And this is like we actually see a really good analogy in the current system right now. Not even just with the money itself, with it being fiat and stuff like that, and this pushback to get on something better, get something gold backed again, but also which sides were kind of taking which money. It's a very interesting thing. But then there is the slight inversion too. And one of my friends just taught me recently. It's a new method I've been using. I haven't fully fleshed it out yet, but I do like it so far with how I have been using it. Is you always see some type of inversion of the prior cycle when these new cycles come in with these outer planets. That there's an inversion that comes in, and I've really been liking the results I get with that because I think that would be a situation where this fits in really good. Yeah, Andrew Jackson would be a good chart to pull sometime. Oh yeah, and then so let's now that we're here in the Civil War, I think we only have like 2 charts left. So sorry guys, I'm wrapping it up for you. I think we just hit 2 hours. I'm making really good time if I'm being honest. I was really like I'll be done before 3 hours, so we're making good time. All right. Oh wait, what am I doing? Lincoln assassination. We'll get to that in a second. Let's hear the Civil War opens. So after all those things that I just talked about with the real reason for the Civil War going down, the things we saw going on in the background, and honestly, I could go on much longer, but for expediency's sake, we're just gonna kind of like I'm giving you that stuff right there because that's the important stuff to know. But we've got this chart here. So let's see how this lines up. This would be, this is the Fort Sumter attack right here that we've got going on. First, I was going to do when the official declaration, which is the day after on April 13th, but I ended up going with the Fort Sumter attack or massacre, whatever you want to call it. Well, we've got the North Node, highest point in the chart, North Node. And this time is accurate too, so we can use the houses. So it's actually a late degree Pisces rising, which is interesting. And I would almost say that it's probably an Aries rising chart, if I'm being honest. Because this gave me like essentially a 30-minute window. And like if I put that 30 minutes later, it's an Aries rising. So I kind of like an Aries rising chart a little more, but it could be Pisces. We'll work with it. We'll workshop it. But yeah, that North Node conjoined with the prenatal solar eclipse right there, just within orb. But yeah, like that's really interesting. In the 10th house, I don't even really technically need to discuss houses too much because where the house placements are, they line up with the zodiac signs, unless there's some overlap I see right here. But no, and I think that would be an inconjunct right there from that solar eclipse. It would be the solar eclipse, right? Oh no, that'd be from the North Node. Excuse me, from the North Node down to Jupiter in Leo too, and we're about to have Jupiter in Leo, so we're coming into a time here, mind you. This was right here, like essentially at the anaretic minute, so like an anaretic degree within a degree, because we were at 57 minutes here, with the Neptune placement there, 29 degrees, 57 minutes. So I guess it would be like 59 minutes for it to like technically be there, but like we're at like the exact edge of that Neptune Pisces in there. And then we really saw the same exact thing where Iran came back like somewhere in there at the last degree of it, like right as it moved in to Neptune in Aries. We saw that as well. And then we've got the sun in Aries too. And so with that though, next year is more when you'd see Saturn come into orb of that sun. And next year is where we're going to have Jupiter in Leo. So this chart's going to be undergoing a Jupiter return, along with, like at the same time there's it wouldn't be the solar return would have already passed, but then you will have Saturn coming into orb just barely. It should just barely come into orb of that and conjoin with the sun right there. And that sun is in square to the prenatal solar eclipse right there. And so what that says to me, I mean, it really speaks to, I'm kind of just giving the aspects here, not saying what it means. Let me say what it means. This speaks to all the structures coming down, really, and starting new with something. So these structures, especially around money, because I tie Neptune to money, like there's like, and this is what I wanted to get into. I think it's on one of my things here, but so like we can tie a lot of not only just with the money stuff we saw during Neptune and Aries, but Uranus was also in Gemini, so we were in that sweet spot where we could have these money changes back during the Civil War here, and there were massive money changes going on behind the scenes. People don't talk about this part of the Civil War. That's the whole monologue I just went on earlier. But you got to look at words, meanings of words, how we use words. So when you're looking at money itself, okay, like we call it what? Currency. Currency. Where are we putting our money? We're storing it in a bank. What the bank of what? The banks of a river. You got that. So when you're in an extreme amount of debt, it's called like you're going underwater. Like on a loan or something like that, going underwater, all these, or in the markets, you have what's called liquidity. So all these things are very water related. And I think this is something that astrologers can overlook here, where they miss the Neptunian aspect of money itself and like how it really works. And this gets into the money magic, Babylonian money magic, if you want to call it that. It gets into a lot of that stuff. So even with the newer technologies that Uranus and Gemini is going to bring around money, the new systems that we're going to be able to have the money go into, there's that Neptunian flow, which is going to guide that money. The Neptunian flow, and it is water based. And then this is why you see around moon cycles, because the moon controls the tides, it controls the water. And so these moon cycles making certain aspects and doing things, this is what I've noticed in the crypto markets, is where these moon cycles have an effect, and even Mercury ones too, because it's crypto and it's mercurial. But no, the moon cycles, like a full moon, for instance, is typically where you see like the markets like kind of tank a little bit, or you see dips in the market. And then the new moon is where you see like bigger good things in the market and all that stuff. So this really, all this stuff kind of lands with the whole Neptune and Aries, with the new financial system that came in after because of the Lincoln Greenbacks and all that, and then how this got set up, which was then taken back away from us when the Federal Reserve came in, 30-40 years later, from the continuation of the war. And I think that was I forget if it was 1913, 1914, something like that, 1912. It was somewhere in there that the Federal Reserve comes in, and we see that. So, and that, that's an astrology that I'll need to look at. But yeah, and we'll get to this chart here, though. I kind of looked at a lot of the stuff. A moon in Taurus, there we go again with that moon in Taurus. I've been getting actually quite a few of these in these charts here. And then we even have a conjunction of Mars with Uranus right there too. So this is what's really getting me. So you have this as the Civil War being the opening, okay? The opening part of the Civil War. We've got a lot of these similar placements coming in. We've got the Jupiter that's going to be in Jupiter return. It's going to be Jupiter in Leo later this year in the summer. Now, I think it'll be around that 4th of July time. I think it will already be in there. But it's somewhere, like it's close. It's a close one. But I have a full separate video I'm going to be doing on this. But that Jupiter Leo right there, so that's going to be the Jupiter return that we have, okay? We've got all of these aspects that are going to be, and this will be over going into next year, but something is, for the 4th of July, something's kicking off, and it's a revisitation of not only the money aspect of the Civil War, the civil unrest part, the sides against each other within, and all that. I don't know if that's a false flag. I even think there's like something alien disclosure, like a curveball to throw in there that comes at some point. But no, because what we have on the 4th of July, and I forget the date, it's exact. It starts on the 3rd of July is like where I think when it first comes into orb, or that might be when it's exact. There's some date with the 3rd of July, but the 4th of July, it's still there as well. That's the 250th year of the 250th year anniversary of the United States of America. We're going to be in a Uranus return. Okay, it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be quite at that degree, but it's going to be close to that degree. And then you're going to have Mars that comes in and conjoins with Uranus there. And then that's going to unlock a lot of stuff from this previous Civil War chart. That's the thing. And then you've got even these, with Mars here, you got that square to Saturn. Saturn in Virgo here, which is at opposition with the Chiron, which is in Pisces there. And then Pisces ruling planet Neptune. So that is like a money thing, money structures and all that. We've got the South Node in Virgo right now. This is what we're moving away from. So there is this revisitation of the money system that came out as a result of this, that eventually got abolished. We're revisiting that. Okay. And then also you want to remember the technology part of Uranus and Gemini that comes forward. This is the whole thing. A lot of people haven't heard of the Sonoro Aero Club and the airship mysteries that are happening during the Civil War. And these are airships people were talking about that were landing, and people were just talking and having conversations with normal people. And then getting back on the airship, they said it was like this type of technology. This gets into this technology that's been running under the scenes even since, because I went back to the Roswell event. Let's go to the webcam here. I went back to the Roswell event and that Uranus Gemini, and where we saw that's kind of where a lot of these technologies, they went underground, that we recovered from the Roswell event. So now we're here looking at the Civil War astrology. What do we have? The same thing. Uranus and Gemini. What am I talking about? The Sonoro Aero Club and the airship mysteries, and this technology that was being used by a select few, by an elite. Now, this is all very well documented too. Plenty of Germans who came over during this time and were working on this technology. But like I said, look it up, Sonoro Aero Club. Look it up, And this is what gets so interesting, because how are we to say, is this aliens? Is this technology we've had since this was before that? Could you imagine that we built out that Sonoro Aero Club from the Civil War time period, technology out to the level to where then we were able to do all sorts of different things, or maybe even meet aliens, who knows? But it could advance to that point to where we got that UFO down in Roswell because there was a radar weapon that they used for it. Much more than radar, but just to give you an idea of it. And then that actually was used, when that came down, that was just a later model or the newest version of what we had already built. And this is the kind of thing we need to tackle. And this gets in from us moving away from the Pisces energy. Are they going to have to be aliens for you to accept it? Or could you accept that these were human beings that have been using genetic modification? These could even be Atlanteans. These could be people from the time of Atlantis who have been staying underwater. We talk about underwater submersible objects, USOs, down in the water. I don't think it's that far-fetched to say that these could be Atlanteans that have been surviving, seeding certain small groups' technology through the eras. This would tie in with the Vedic stuff and their Vimanas. This would tie in with a lot of things. So the whole thing with these new placements we have of the outer planets is to start thinking differently about things, and maybe not so easily look at the things that have been dangled in front of us, because they're pushing the alien stuff. The thing that they shadow ban and don't want getting out is when people start talking about them being us, them being Atlanteans. That's what I see get shadow banned the most. But this falls in with a lot of information that I've been able to find, is that you have to think about the idea of free will and who sets up this universe. Would they even allow that? Would they allow for beings from another world to come here and mess with us and our free will and all that? Maybe not. You can make the argument not. You can make the argument for it. And then, so with that being said, what they would allow is us from the past that got to an evolved state and then underwent a cataclysm. Only a few of them survived to keep on messing with us because we are them. And this gets into the whole time travel with aliens. Are they us from the future, us from the past kind of thing? So just questions that we want to ask ourselves, but didn't mean to get on that tangent there because we are talking about the Civil War, but there's this technology aspect that comes through with the Civil War. All right, but yeah, we got the Civil War chart here. I kind of went over the major stuff. We've got that moon in Taurus here making a square over to, gosh, I'm like getting lost with the lines there. It is Jupiter. Okay, yeah. Making that square to Jupiter, moon in Taurus. So, and by then, are we going to have, we've got planets slowing down right now, but I don't think we'll have anything lingering in Taurus that long when we come back around. However, this stuff is going to have these oppositions later in the year with that Venus in Scorpio. So just some kind of interesting time frames. I mean, definitely look out for summer for something violent. We haven't even pulled up the chart of this summer itself, of the 4th of July. But man, this will be a summer to never forget for sure. Whether it's disclosure, whether it's violence, whether it's some type of civil war, some type of false flag. It could be all of the above if we're being honest. But when I look at this chart and I have the other chart in my head of the 4th of July this year, I mean, we're already in the new world. It's just going to be, this is where we see it become manifest. And I really kind of just winged it. This is the part I knew the best of the presentation. So, but yeah, Lincoln's greenback was an anti-Neptunian currency, sovereign, debt-free, of the land. Killing him was the maritime empire taking back the helm. And then you got this whole maritime thing, Neptune, Aries, and the maritime empire would be the British Empire. Okay, Tsar Alexander II and the fleet. So, and this is just a little thing that's interesting. This is what I was talking about earlier. Tsar Alexander II emancipates the serfs with sovereign bonds funding peasant land purchases. And so this was really what they were worried about in the Civil War era, was the funding. Like, oh, are we going to have to give up our land and give them a piece of our land because we freed them and stuff like that? That was what really, and essentially like something like that. Not quite the same, but it ended up happening anyway because the South lost. The Democrats lost the Civil War. I always want to stress that it was the Democrats that lost the Civil War, just to kind of break a lot of brainwashing people have. And that's not to get me to have you vote Republican by any means. They're both just shitty right now at this point. But like, let's just break a little bit of the brainwashing and not, like, I don't know, for any like black people who may watch this, like, let's not do this anymore and enable this. But it doesn't mean we need to vote for Republicans, but like, let's not vote for these Democrats anymore. Like, when you know what they are and where they come from and follow the history back, why on earth would you want to vote for them? And by the way, like, people will point to Kennedy as being the one that was different. Have you heard the racist shit that Kennedy said? He was one of these ones who also had to really kind of get with the program during the civil rights era, but was always against equal rights for blacks. So, and this is all stuff you can look up. Him chopping it up with his brother and the things that they talked about in terms of rights for black people. So it's just like, I've come at this from every single angle. These things just don't hold up. And it's like, I don't see how black people can be so against slavery and have such a victim mentality all the time and never want to like let slavery go, or like that everything revolves around how they used to be slaves, and it's like barely anyone in living memory anymore was a slave, but yet they become slaves to the Democrat Party and just constantly vote blue. That's insane to me. Sorry, that is. But I'm like a free thinker, and I don't care what people think about me, and I don't have this I don't care like what race my friends are. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of black people need to be around other black people, and that's cool and stuff. But there's this whole idea of needing the validation from them. I don't know. Like, there's this validation that comes in, because what I've noticed, if I don't get with the program and share all the opinions of black people that I'll be around, they ostracize the shit out of me. And that's fine, because I can handle it. I grew up on World of Warcraft. I can handle that shit. But like, I'm just saying, Like, we need, if we want to see change in the black community, these are the things that need to be addressed and be talked about, you know? And then the worst part is I bring this stuff up and people call me an Uncle Tom motherfucker. They say I'm self-hating and all this stuff. Do I seem like someone who hates themselves? You know what I mean? But let's move on. Sorry. I mean, I really went through a lot of this. Oh, the Coinage Act demonetizes silver, gold only standard. Okay, we're making good time. Cool, we're making good time. I'll be done in like 15 to 20 minutes here, guys. So we're kind of wrapping it up, doing the final thesis here. Okay. All right. Yeah, Coinage Act came through. The Coinage Act of 1873 was called the Crime of 73. So yeah, it was demonetizing silver. It was a gold only standard. And then there's pros and cons to that kind of stuff. I remember diving deep on that last year at some point. But let's kind of get through this. Oh yeah, and this is the minuscule amounts of gold and silver I was talking about through which these things could be exchanged. This is the Specie Resumption Act. The greenback becomes redeemable in gold at par exactly 10 years after. But the thing is that we need to remember about this is this was microscopic amounts of gold and stuff, specie. So essentially, like, sure, it was fiat. It's this weird thing where, this was your first idea of a tokenized asset. And what do we see going on with crypto? Tokenized assets. So this astrology literally is coming back in. And this is why I say Neptune and Aries has a lot more to deal with money than people think. A lot more. All right. William Gladstone, British Prime Minister. Oh, Confederate notes, excuse me. Had carried legends payable after Treaty of Peace with a 10-year horizon. The Resumption Act conveniently makes good on the equivalent. So, and that's like the whole thing. So really, they were both fiat, and this is what I said in my initial monologue on this, both fiat currency, both fake currency, but there was at least some type of backing to the greenback, but ultimately it was more of a tokenized asset. And so we're going to need to look out for this as time goes on. With everything that's going to unfold in front of us, is they're going to sell us something as like, oh no, this is actually real money. It's backed by gold. But it's not necessarily real. It's backed by a specie, a minuscule microscopic amount of gold that really ultimately it makes it worthless, you know? And it just gets into these like small little things here. All right, and then we've got William Gladstone, British Prime Minister, was documented holder of Confederate debt. So we're members of Queen Victoria's Privy Council too. So yeah, like, I don't know if I want to like dig into this right now, but essentially the same powers of that money that you can think of right now that were funding the Democrats, the Confederates of that time period, are the ones, if you look into the money sources and taking Israel out of the equation for the right and the left, just take that out of the equation. But other people that are funding, like they mainly fund the Democrats. It's the same people, the royal family, essentially, in the ways in which it moves. So you're getting into more like Rothschild type of stuff, that type of stuff. And then, you know, I mean, look at even Epstein, you know, he's a Democrat, you know, like look at the people he hung out with and stuff. Now, I think he kind of went beyond Democrat, Republican, but if you just look at who he associated with, and he was a front man for the Rothschilds. So it kind of just gets into this stuff coming back up again in this time period under the astrology with these like little inversions that you get too. The Comstock load, this is what I brought up, the Comstock load in Nevada, around $250 million of silver. And I'm pretty sure that was in the money of that time. So that's a lot of silver being surveyed by Baron Ferdinand von Richthofen for the Johnson administration while silver was being demonetized. So that's interesting because the Comstock load was silver, but then silver was being demonetized at that same time. So this gets into like essentially that whole thing I talked about of how the Comstock load was used in order to to be deflationary, and we are going into a deflationary period again. So these are just things to know about. And really, the whole thing I'm getting at with this, yeah, Byron's Cross of Gold, Wizard of Oz. That's interesting. That's so funny. Okay, Grant visits Iron Council. Okay, so we pretty much, here we go. The water beneath the money. I kind of told you guys about this. I'm essentially ready to end here and get into my thesis for all of this and what this all means. I've kind of went over a lot today. I jumped around, like zipped around and stuff, but now we're going to come into like a really good thesis and everything. Let's just kind of go into the language of money is the sea. So yeah, I talked about currency, liquidity, bank. One thing I didn't say is cash flow, float, which is like for checks, deposit, like, cause, on the shores, you get the deposits from the water, laundered money, drowning in debt. I know I said underwater too with one of those things, but yeah, all of these, like this language of money is the sea. Neptune rules the sea. This gets into maritime admiralty law and stuff like that. So, and if you haven't looked up maritime admiralty law or common law, not saying they're necessarily the same, but I think they're more so adjacent to one another. Look into that stuff because this gets into big differentiations in our legal system and all that. Now, this is something I don't think my friend PMSO is here anymore because, she kind of deals with people who use that and run that as a scam and all that. And I'm more using it in a way just to understand etymology and the meanings of words and stuff like that. Not because it's not something that will hold up in court. It's not. So, you have to like be really careful with this. And this gets into like this switch over. I think I might have it in here. But yeah, and then this kind of gets even more into that, like where this idea of common law and maritime admiralty law specifically comes in, because look at these words like citizenship, ownership, partnerships, lordship, friendship, all these ship things. Okay, there's ship at the end, and so and this goes back into like an older time and law period and stuff, but this really gets to the heart of a lot of deeper stuff. But it's like the way that Jordan Maxwell goes over this is that you are not just a person, you're on a vessel. So this like allows for the corporation, nation state, church, churches, like all that stuff to have like, this type of ownership over you. Now, I'm not saying this stuff holds up legally because there's like ways around that and stuff, but these are just interesting things to know and all that because of how they utilize this language for you to kind of it's the whole Plato's cave thing. And I never described it earlier, but the whole idea of Plato's cave is you've got people chained up in a cave, that where they can't turn around or anything, and they're always, and this is like a fictional thing, but it describes the reality that we live in. And in this cave, behind them you've got people with like you got fire behind them and a wall that they see, and then people making shadows. And you have them there long enough, people will think that the shadows are real, like that becomes their reality until you bring them out in the cave and like bring them out of the cave. And most people you bring out of the cave will want to go right back in and just look at the shadows. This is what the awakening experience is going to be like for everyone here in the next few years, who are going to find out things that they never thought possible, that are horrors beyond comprehension in some cases. This is what this Aries energy is calling on us to do and to be ready for. Because, a lot of people are just not going to really have the mental bandwidth to handle it, But that's really what I want to get at, though, is just there's there's this whole, the reality we see, it's just a reflection of the true reality of this world. That's the best way to say it. And the Plato's cave allegory is the best way to get into it. It's just this reality is a reflection of something else going on, like in order for us to move and act in a certain way. And really the ultimate, let me go here. The ultimate energy that you can give the elites is your attention. It's the consciousness. That's the energy of the universe. So as I said with Plato's cave, the allegory of Plato's cave is that everything is an illusion. We're seeing a reflection of the true reality. And the true reality, if we were to see it, most people would want to unsee it and come back to the fake world. And that's what these transits are about. Is about, okay, I'm ready for the real world. Like, let's see what you got. And all these things are going to be unveiled. All these systems are going to come crashing down, burning down. There's going to be destruction. There's going to be death. But if you're watching this, you're going to be at the right place at the right time, in the right place at the right time for what's coming. And so it's nothing to be scared about. It's just to know, like, we are now in a new world. All that's left is to see it manifest on the material, you know? And yeah, we got a couple more of these things, but I'll just really go into my thesis. Like, ships are christened, so are babies. Ships have documents, passports, you know? A birth certificate, as birth, BERTH certificate, your vessel docked at port of entry. So, like, all these things, you know, maiden voyage, you know, maidenhood rather, and like those two, that little play on that. That goes deeper. I won't explain it because I'm trying to like really wrap up, but yeah, this is just more of like maritime admiralty. The trident, though, Vatican, religious, City of London, financial, Washington, D.C., military. 3 prongs of a single trident, Neptune symbol. That's very key to remember, okay, when we get into this whole idea of Plato's cave, of this false reality that's been propagated in front of us and what we energetically sign on to just through the words that we use on a daily basis. You know, something even simple we can say like, good morning. Like, what are we mourning? You know, this is why people have shifted in the spiritual community to saying grand rising, you know, but we have to just really understand the power of words, especially in the times ahead, because we don't realize the ways in which we'll use them against us. But this is what I was talking about, maritime admiralty law. Maxwell argued modern Western courts operate under admiralty rather than common law of the land. The legal claim fails in actual courts. Like that's like I was saying too. Symbolically, it illuminates how international finance and corporate law operate. And so, yeah, this gets in, and then this kind of gets into the whole conspiracy of, what would you call it? I'm forgetting. The conspiracy of like how courtrooms are ruled and how like the what is it? Like how America's a corporation itself, and this happened like around actually some of the dates that we were looking at. So, you know, like I'm not, people are very opinionated on these things, and like I just like to consider these things because I like, first and foremost, like etymology, the study of like the languages and how we use the languages, how they've evolved and like what they really mean, what it's doing subconsciously to us, how it's making us, you know, be the architect of our own reality, rising above that stuff through the words you use, through your intention. Those are the important things, not trying to beat something in court and be your own lawyer by using this kind of stuff, you know. I mean, I've seen it happen. I've heard stories of it happening, but it's not something to depend on. Whatever financial corporate restructuring this cycle is going to drop, it opens that door. So February 21st, 1871, District of Columbia Organic Act signed. Saturn. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Same calendar date, 155 years apart, too. So we will see something new with money coming out, too. This is what I was even saying with Uranus Gemini, too. There's a powerful change coming to money. All right. We got the Lincoln assassination, but I do not have time for that. So I'm just going to get to the end here. Yeah. So let's go here. So we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to give some predictions. But right now, like the whole thing, the thesis, I guess, of this is I've laid out the case for you on the relationship between Neptune, Aries, and Islamic eschatology, study of the end times. And then I've laid out the case for Neptune itself and, you know, Neptune Aries transits and how that deals with money systems. And then we've talked about how we've gotten to this point where we see money as God. Like, if you really think about it, most people, even some of your staunchest Christians that go to their megachurch every Sunday, they view money as God because their whole life revolves around money. You know the types of people I'm talking about. And it's not just like a Christian. I'm not singling out Christians. I am a Christian. But what I'm saying is we've gotten to this point where the only pushback I am seeing against this idea of money as God is coming through Iran, because they are the only ones set up astrologically to push back against that in whatever it is they are trying to do. This is not me saying I agree with the IRGC. This is definitely also is not me saying that I am in favor of anything that Israel is doing. Their approval rating is at all-time lows. I think everyone is just over it, especially if you're under 50, under 40, 50, something like, you're like, no, like F Israel. But anyway, so these are the two things under it that are coming to a clash here. And this is going to have to deal with how this new money system, which we see in every Neptune Aries cycle, a new monetary system, a new money system coming in, a new, even with some of these older ones, I never went over the slides, but new ways in which they trade before there was like money systems like that and all that. So, so we've got this idea in the West of money as God, a system that's trying to hold it up, that America is the crux of. Now China has been brought into the fold with this major deal and everything. Uranus Gemini is bringing in the new technologies with all of this. That is going to be the scaffolding, or you could say the vase, that's very Aquarian, which Uranus is the ruler of, a like water bearer vase in which the money is going to flow, because money is just energy. So as this new system comes down, that energy will flow if there is a basin or a vase for it to be held in. And so what form is that going to take? Iran is going to have a huge part in that, depending on what they do, what comes up, and this trinity of convergence I keep speaking of, where we have three eschatologies coming together, three end time stories, biblical prophecies that are coming together in a convergence right now. And we're going to live through something that hasn't been lived through in about like 4,000 years, I would say, because that was the last time we had these planets, and that was the fall of the Bronze Age. So this is what we want to ramp up and get ready to see. And for anyone that stuck around for this, to see this thesis, thank you, because I did put a lot of work into this, and we still just have a couple predictions, a couple things to look out for, and then I'm going to sign off. So let me switch back here. All right. Structural case for Civil War 2.0. Okay, yeah, so that's it's so weird because I keep on getting these like repeat letters. It's very Uranus and Gemini, as someone said before. Oh gosh, it's like overlapping a little bit. Hyper-militarization of domestic life. So this is more like a Saturn in Aries thing. But really what you can expect to see, because you got 434 million firearms in private U.S. hands, okay? U.S. Special Forces, which, by the way, most of the drug kingpins and stuff like that are former U.S. Special Forces. Like, when you look at people who go rogue and who create big issues for the military, they're former U.S. Special Forces. So that's someone to watch out for, is U.S. Special Forces. And then if you look at the top 5 militaries, this will surprise you. Top 5 militaries in the world. It's United States Air Force, United States Navy, then it's Russia, then it's the United States Marines, and then the United States. It might be the Special Force. There's another one that's United States. So 4 out of the 5 are United States for that. So this is really what I want to drive in terms of the Civil War 2.0. Is that less about you seeing people fighting on the streets, although you'll see that, people fighting each other on the streets over political stuff, but I think we'll see far less of that than you think. And really it's going to be factions within our government that get taken over and are fighting one another on our soil. And so we will, and when you see that kind of stuff happen, it puts a whole new light on how lockdowns will be allowed to happen and people would put up with them. If there's violence and dogfights going on all around, and aerial fights and tanks rolling through and getting into fights in major cities and stuff like that, I think people would be okay with a little bit of a lock. I'm not saying I'm okay with it. I'm just saying I think people will be like, just make it stop. This is why I'm trying to get people ready for this time. I'm trying to, I'm not trying to scare people and be like, the world's going to end, but it's like, if you're ready for this, you can stand firm in things and not sacrifice even more liberties than we've sacrificed since I've been alive. Just because everything gets scary, because you are ready for this to happen. So top command trends, democratic operator level personnel trend. Yeah. So that's the thing, is you got Democrats who are like operator level, and then personnel, and a top command. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I thought of that wrong, but yeah, like the top echelons of the military. That's where you got mostly Democrat people, and then where you got the people who are the operators who are actually putting their life on the line. That's where you got mostly Republican. So that's the structural fissure inside the armed forces, and you're going to see that be accentuated during all of this, during the Civil War 2.0 that we're coming into. And then collapsed binding narratives. The American dream is no longer credible to anyone. America, the good, is believed by neither left or right. Liberalism, differences are resolved through speech, died around November 2016. And that's really, you can see, and that's not to say anything about Trump specifically, because obviously he's the one who got in 2016. It's more just like the style of politics we do is not through speech anymore. Look at the political violence we're having. Do you realize how many, it was a great, not all of my Democrat friends, but a great deal of them cheered when Charlie Kirk got shot. That should tell you something about the climate we're in. And that's not to single them out, because I've seen some similar stuff with Republicans, I know, but it's like, that's creepy to me. That's creepy. That shows you like how much people have gotten sucked into their Black Mirror, their cell phone, the show Black Mirror. It's like, there's something it does to someone, and it's very Pluto based. You got Pluto in Aquarius right now. There's something in the eyes though. Like, when someone's gone into a trance, like there's a thing with I'll switch this. There's a thing with the eyes when it comes to Pluto, placements of Pluto, Plutonian issues people have, and going into like trance-like states where the pupils dilate and stuff, where people go into this gaze, this craze that you see in the eyes. When people talk about like women having the crazy eyes, this is Plutonian, okay? And so what I've seen from people who are celebrating, whether it's the death of Charlie Kirk, or they're getting mad that the bullet didn't hit Trump, but like for the Butler, Pennsylvania rally, and there's a shift in their energy, and their eyes become Plutonian when they're saying this to me, and it's very creepy to me, but this deals with the shadow, and through that technology, the shadow can come out. So people who are scrolling all day, it's called doom scrolling for a reason, Like, I definitely use technology, but I have fun with it. Like, I like to research stuff. I'm not sitting here trying to forget about my reality by scrolling through things and getting emotionally triggered by things that I am seeing online. Like, I view this as something I came here to do. This is fun for me. Like, I like to look into politics. I like to look at history. I'm not getting emotionally charged about these things, So that's the thing you got to worry about. People are going to go very trance-like, get taken over by, whether it's the religious stuff, the political stuff, with the stuff that's going to be with the new Civil War, like all of these things. You got to protect your energy, and you got to be ready for what's coming. So, collapse institutional authority. That's the thing too. Media, court, science, military, universities, government. No institution left can produce common factual consensus. A nation requires a shared narrative. The shared narrative no longer exists. And this is what we're seeing. We'll see it come back, but it's like for now, it's kind of like over. And that's what a big part of all this new technology, new stuff is coming out. And you know, the combination of Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini will be good for this. It'll bring in new science and all that. Bring in like all this Pisces energy. It was kind of like delusions. You could believe whatever you wanted to believe around a lot of different things as things move through Pisces. So yeah, but these are the phases. We got riots and unrest, and that you can kind of say it's already underway. But yeah, that's really the next couple of years, because Saturn, Neptune, that's where they're gonna have to bring in the control grid. And then phase 2, neighbor on neighbor, civil conflict in zip codes where the divide cuts close. So you gotta just kind of think about where you live and all that stuff. Like, is there gonna be like this weird, you know, like it gets into this map here. I gotta finish up before I hit 3 hours here. Oh yeah, it was right on here. It gets into, I should have went over more charts for you guys. I went over a few, like I didn't go over the Prophet Muhammad. I just don't have time. But Putin's New World Order, you know, and it's just called that. Really, this is from Foundations of Geopolitics by Alexander Dugin. But look at this, like you got the blue, the red, the purple, the red, blue, you know, and so it starts to get like dicey in those like dividing lines right there. That's like really where, I mean, I'm not just saying this is like representative of that exactly in the States, but you know, that's just kind of a representation of like where those divides can hit, and there becomes neighbor on neighbor. But I don't think it will be as much as you would think. That's what I was saying earlier. State and city secession attempts, state level MOUs with foreign powers, Oregon and the UK are the early structural fingerprint. And that was, you know, well, we had states secede in the last Civil War. It's going to happen again. People are going to try to secede. Insurgencies, armed political groups attempting regional or municipal control, you know? And then this is where the special forces comes in. And they'll do coups, counter coups, assassinations performed by units of the formal command structure can't fully control. So you will, essentially that's like the last phase, or the biggest phase, where you see special forces just break out and take over institutions, parts of the military, and fight one another. The Aries energy that wins, that the probable terminal state. Yeah. Here's the thing. This is what it seems like it's been getting set up. And this isn't just what like what I want to happen or anything. Trust me, it's not. But this is what it seems like based on a lot of different information. This is what I see in the astrology. This is what I see in like a lot of different things. And this is why, you know, as spiritual people, you kind of want to be careful. Not quite yet, but soon. You want to be careful like what you talk about. You know, why do you think I position myself as a Christian? But the probable terminal state, a Christian isolationist, a Christian isolationalist successor to the current United States. So it would be like a Christian nationalist isolationist successor to the current United States, not because Christian nationalism is the most popular position, but because its adherents are the most willing to fight and die, and because they happen to be disproportionately represented in police, military, and special forces. And that makes sense to me, you know. So I did consolidate that from a couple different sources. I don't even know if any of them were astrological sources, but what, like my own, you know, because I can do the astrology. Like that's just what it seems like we're moving into, is like belief all of a sudden becoming like that. Like Neptune and Aries very much feels like that just on its own, besides other placements that we could look at. And that's just, yeah, the same Aries energy that produces martyrs produces winners. And so, and then with the Iran too, because you got to think about Trump surrounded himself with their tech bros, positioning themselves as Christian nationalists. What do they know that we don't know? They know something we don't know. Why are they positioning themselves as Christian nationalists, like J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel? You know? And then Trump's only path out of legal jeopardy is staying in power. 2-term limit gets evaded by running his son in 2028. Or he could run J.D. Vance. He could do a wartime emergency and cancel elections. There's not many different options. The Iran war manufactures that emergency. So that's kind of really the reason that we're in there. Is like there's a way that I think he views it and wants to restructure America, but also, that's like he wants to stay out of prison as well. And I'm not saying I agree with his vision because I couldn't even know it, but I have a good idea. I think I've laid that out very clearly in the last few streams, what it is and what it seems like it's going that way. Okay. Yeah, and then so really we're coming into, for my prediction, I mean, yeah, we're really like coming up on, it goes out until, I don't know like why it says like plus or minus 4 months, because it's more like 8 months is where my prediction's at for this. But so February, where we just had that conjunction, I'd say it was within like 6 months of that. So within 6 months of that, because I'm thinking around like October, major financial reorganization announcement. Look, we just had that announcement too with China and stuff. And who are the people that were there? There are people that deal with pretty much every aspect of our systems that currently run everything in that big, huge China deal that just happened. So they're, and then what did I say with all the Neptune and Aries stuff? Gold-backed digital token framework, sovereign debt event, or BRICS rearrangement. This is the Crime of 73 and Resumption Act coming back again. Casey's entire change in the financial world and economical world that he talks about. So this is threading all these together. Gulf of Tonkin style triggering incident is structurally probable. This could be the 4th of July. This could be around that time where we get that Uranus-Mars conjunction. Okay, Iran is not Iraq. It does not end quickly. Maddest messaging inside Iran reaches fever pitch. A new messianic peacemaker figure surfaces, and this is like later. This is it's the time frame I already gave you guys on this. A new messianic figure emerges. This is 2026 to 2030. I'm guessing more towards 2030, but I did say it could be within like 2 to 3 years. Every Neptune and Aries cycle has produced one. Watch for an Iranian or Arab modest claimant, a Russian spiritual figure, which is Casey's prediction, and remember the interplay between them, or a techno-religious accelerationalist, possibly all three, in their 30s now and largely unknown. And this goes actually some other information I haven't been able to find that echoed this kind of stuff. I found it years ago and I didn't really think much of it. And then starting next year, I mean, even like towards the end of this year, but next year, charismatic assassinations. So Kirk was kind of the sneak peek for that. Then we had the planets like retrograde back in, and now they've moved back in, and so that's kind of like what we'll see coming back is just like these people that we're seeing on TV all the time just getting assassinated, these political assassinations. We're going to see them come back. And not just come back from the Kirk period, but from the Civil War period. Religious schisms, and then a Catholic succession, Orthodox jurisdiction fragmenting, American evangelicalism splitting. This is in the next 5 years. Just more religious stuff. I think I went over kind of all this. I guess the one I didn't go over is constitutional crisis. And then really it has to do with the Pluto return becoming exact. The exact return, because we're in the Pluto return, but it's not exact yet. So once we hit that exact amount, there's not only a constitutional crisis, but new founding documents that are created. And this gets into the Uranus and Gemini stuff that we have. And this would be around that same time period. Cyber event that takes down U.S. infrastructure. It's information warfare. So, and that's the thing is I feel that in the energy, but I'm not sure how long that is. That really should be 2020. It should be now until 2033, honestly. Like I said, I kind of punched this into AI. It saved me a lot of time. And then a long depression. Yeah, the AI bubble burst, super long depression. This is where we go into the deflationary period, that kind of stuff. A restructured, united. And really, these are kind of, since I got some of these dates wrong, I mean, I do vibe with these dates, but at the same time, it's I can see these being sooner too. So, but I'm going to have an actual predictions video I do along with my summer the summer conjunction, the 4th of July conjunction video. I'll be doing that. So, but yeah, and then by 2039, restructured United States, restructured Middle East, Iran question resolved one way or the other, a restructured global currency, and a restructured religious landscape. Whatever is built between now and then defines the next 36 years through the next Saturn. I would even argue the next 84 years. Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Oh, well, it's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Okay. I mean, still, though, I'd still argue that'll be a key period, but I would even argue the next 84 years, because it would be another turning, because we're in the 4th turning is what it's called, which is essentially the guy who came up with this term wasn't aware of the Uranus cycles, but these are what the Uranus cycles are, the turnings of society, of global powers shifting hands. So we're in that turning right now. And it probably won't be us anymore. Honestly, it probably won't. It'll probably be Russia, if I'm being honest. But we went over a lot. And I can't believe I managed to do this in under 3 hours. I knew I'd be cutting it close, but I went off on these tangents. So I just want to thank everyone who came by, whether you're by and you were here at the beginning or you just swung by or anything. A lot of info we went over. Of course, as always, I'll be making this into clips and getting this out. So we'll get the information out there and all that. But yeah, and then I always love feedback. Feel free to comment on the videos. Of course, feel free to subscribe. Liking doesn't hurt. I can reach more people that way. But definitely, I always put a lot of work into these, and I try to bring you something that other astrologers aren't going to bring you. Connections they won't bring you, that kind of stuff. And I'll go over the basic stuff that they're going to talk about, but I don't like necessarily, that's not where my pride is. My pride is in these connections I made, like this, money as God versus Islam, and the clash that these are coming into, and the eschatological mechanisms behind these. I don't know of any astrologers that are talking about each planet ruling an eschatology of each religion, each major religion. I haven't seen any astrologers talk about it. So I try to bring you something different, and something that's well thought out. And I hope I brought that for you today. So, but yeah, you guys take it easy. Of course, Night's Light Astrology. It's nightslight.co for my website. I guess I have my card here. I could always put it up, right? If it will even, well, whatever. But yeah, nightslight.co for my website. I'll get all of that in the description. It's on my banner on YouTube. I've got a link tree. I've got a Twitter, and that's at Nightslight, spelled just like Nightslight Astrology. I just got the handle changed for it. But yeah, everyone, take it easy. And in these times we have coming up ahead, just obviously stay calm and know that you're a light in the world. If you're watching this, you're a light in the world, and you're going to be a light for so many people around you when the carpet gets pulled out from under for a lot of us, for everyone, essentially. And I know that's scary to say, but as I said before, if that's so scary, then maybe you've signed on to this system a little too much, and maybe you've made money your God. But anyway, have a good one.